across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Just after 1 o'clock on Thursday, August the 20th. David Bull here for Ian Collins for the second week in a row. And thank you very much indeed for your company, your messages, your thoughts, and, of course, your calls. Right, let's have a look at the news that's making the headlines this hour. Well, asylum seekers arriving in Britain are being handed Home Office booklets explaining that rape is illegal and that men and women here have equal rights. Now, that's prompted questions over why such basics need spelling out at all. Well, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are reportedly planning to move back to Britain, with Archie and Lilibet enrolled at a British school from September, though there are no current plans for royal duties to resume. We'll talk about that story a little later on. And white pupils are now the most likely ethnicity to skip GCSEs entirely, with 1 in 30 entering no exams at all. That is the first time that white students have topped this league table since records actually began. And those are the headlines of this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Very nice to see you this afternoon. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Peter Barnes, who's a political strategist, our Thursday guest. Yes. Good afternoon.
Nice to see you, Dr. Bull. How are you doing?
That's very formal.
Well, I always feel, whenever I'm around a doctor, I always feel like I have to say it. I don't know why. You get really tense when you're around a doctor. I don't know why.
Well, one of the team members didn't even know that I was a doctor.
And that was very entertaining. We literally did say, is there a doctor in the house? So that was a very entertaining moment.
And he went, well, who's the doctor? And I was like, well, I am.
I know, yeah.
So anyway, so poor boy's gone off to sort of eat humble pie. But anyway, it's increasingly common that actually when I read news, my mouth drops open. Just how ludicrous the news has become. And this pamphlet, which dropped last night, really is one of those moments when I just couldn't believe my eyes. If you have been living under a rock, let me just tell you what's going on here. Asylum seekers have been warned in an official government guidebook not to rape or beat women. This is a Home Office publication which sets out the rules and expectations of living in Britain. It's going to be handed out to asylum seekers as part of an education campaign. It is absolutely mad. It warns if you have sex with someone without their consent, this is called rape. As I said, it dropped yesterday at 7 pages long. Obviously, we've seen all of these horrific rapes and sex attacks by asylum seekers. It also warns new arrivals not to follow someone home or block their path or make rude or offensive gestures. It says it's illegal to have sex with someone under the age of 16. It also says do not have sex with children. It says there are no exceptions to this rule. Even if the children say yes, it is still illegal. This is totally and utterly unacceptable. If people come from very different cultural backgrounds, they have no right to be in this country. And I say, and I keep saying, you detain them and you deport them.
Could not agree more. This pamphlet is basically the government's official kind of recognition that they've failed. This is border failure with a government logo on it. That is exactly what this is. It is admission that integration has not worked, although there is no policy for it at all. This is absolutely horrific. But sadly, this doesn't surprise me. This is the government's reaction to this, is let's do a pamphlet. Not let's actually protect women and children. Let's actually do the things that we need to do to make sure the people of this city, this government and country are safe. But no, let's give everybody a pamphlet, which actually is not as explicit as people keep saying. It doesn't say don't rape women. It messes around, it kind of tidies around the issue.
It does say don't have sex with children.
Yeah, it does say that, but like in those very explicit terms, it doesn't say it. And my big fear is if this is translated into things like Arabic or Farsi or something like that, does it actually translate word for word?
Oh, that's a really good point.
Is the actual context of the actual pamphlet translatable? Has anybody checked that?
Well, the one thing I would say about this is when you look at the way it's written, it's a very sort of caring document. It's like your friend, and the tonality of the document is entirely wrong as far as I can see.
Yeah, exactly. This is my big fear. Is actually this is more of it's taken as a suggestion. It's not as a this is the law.
Correct.
That's my thing. This is written as though it's a kind of, well, if you wouldn't mind awfully, that kind of a level of...
I would agree entirely with that. And it goes on to say, never try to have sex with someone who's asleep, drunk or unable to give
Why are we
consent.
having to say that? Why are we having to say that?
Because the number of sexual offence convictions of foreign nationals has risen by a walloping 62% over the last year. That's why.
But they're all fleeing war, aren't they? So we all have to be nice to people. They're all fleeing war. Yeah. You know, they can't help it. It's not their fault. I mean, that's the narrative that these people come out with. And as far as I'm concerned, anybody who comes out with that nonsense, you have to look these people in the eye who have been victims of crime, of rape, sexual assault. Look these children in the eye and say, oh, but the people that did that to you, they're fleeing a war.
Well, I mean,
that's what they should have to do.
all over the place. Afghanistan, Eritrea, you know, all over the country, all over the world are coming to this country, taking advantage of our good nature and the fact that we're handing out free meals and lodging and that we believe they're true asylum seekers until proven not otherwise. And yet again, the British people are sitting here thinking, what on earth is going on? And the disconnect between the British people and the British state could not be wider now.
I don't think it's in the same hemisphere at this point. That disconnect, I genuinely don't believe it's ever been more stark, and I think this pamphlet is proof of it. I think it really is, and for me, it just shows that the government response is, let's write a letter. Not let's actually enforce our laws. Let's actually keep people safe.
Let's arrest them. Let's keep them, detain them, make sure they don't go out, don't go into villages. I mean, like that village, I think it was Piddington. 400 people live in the village and 1,200 illegal migrants are going to be shoved into the village. I'm really sorry. It's not OK.
Yeah, how many times do you have to put one of these hotels next to a school or something like that, and you wonder why these situations keep happening? Well, you've got the statistics, and now you're writing these pamphlets. It is undeniable now that the government is actively putting people in danger. That pamphlet proves they know there's a problem and they're not doing anything at the source to fix it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They know there's a problem.
They know it now. They've admitted it. They've, like I said, they put their own logo on it, for God's sakes. It's undeniable now, and they are actively putting people at risk.
So now they can't turn around and say, well, we didn't know about it. Yes, because they have actually... Oh, that's a very good point indeed. I mean, Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has got a bit of a nerve, I think, because he says, oh, look, it's absolutely outrageous. Illegal migrants, there is this dichotomy. They're coming from places and societies where attitudes towards women are completely incompatible with Western society. They must be deported. What did you do under your tenure as the Conservative government? They keep talking about leaving the ECHR. Well, you had a long time to do it, didn't you?
I completely agree. I think dropping the ball is somewhat of an understatement when it comes to the Tories and the issue of immigration. For 14 years, they had the chance to fix this, they just didn't.
No, they
just didn't. But more importantly, it was the fact that they could see that this was escalating and they're like snowballing out of control, and they did nothing to stop it. So now we're dealing in the consequences. I call this era the era of consequences, because we're dealing with problems that shouldn't exist because of governments that didn't take action 20, 30 years ago, if not shorter periods. We're dealing with the consequences of inaction, and that's where we are.
Well, when you question these illegal migrants, asylum seekers, so, for example, a migrant who sexually assaulted a 14-year-old schoolgirl whilst living at the asylum hotel, do you remember, in Epping, of course, where all those protests took place, said it was normal to marry children in his country. He pointed at this 14-year-old girl and said, I want a baby from you, and one from you, and one from you, to each of her friends.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
It is disgusting.
It's disgusting. And like I've just said, the government knows this happens now. They can't deny it.
And there's no deterrent.
The only deterrent we have in this country is bad weather. That's the only thing that stops people coming across on the boat is bad weather. We don't have it. Day one, they got rid of the Rwanda scheme, which was actually proving to have an effect before it was being implemented.
Now, that's interesting, because I looked it up this morning, and actually when you started and looking, and I have a timeline of how it was going, and in fact you had all these, the toing and froing to get it through the legal process, and then finally it was up and running. What we saw was the number of illegal migrants moving through from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland because they were so worried about what was going to happen. And I said this yesterday, why wouldn't you, as Keir Starmer, actually think, OK, I'll tell you what, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. That's what good governance is about. Let's see how it plays out. But he couldn't do that, could he? No. He had to cancel it because it's ideology.
Ideology. It was a Tory idea. It was a right-wing idea.
But it might be a good idea.
Oh, that doesn't matter. that man's never had a good idea in his entire life. I don't think he'd know what one was if it popped up. But I think the bigger problem is that, like you said, it was on day one and he was so proud of it.
He was.
That was the bit that really disgusted me. I was like, this is shown to work and you're getting rid of it because you live it like you're in a sixth form kind of student union politics. That's what it was.
I think that is right. And also then replacing it with the one-in, one-out deal, which has been absolutely
I call
atrocious.
it the hokey-cokey migrant.
Well, it is. It's totally ridiculous. I think we sent back 1,000 and we got 17,000 in return or whatever it was. But the numbers are completely stacked against it. I mean, there's another story in the Times today. I mean, literally, I said to Finn, my producer, every day we do immigration. The reason for that is because there are story after story after story in every national newspaper, including The Guardian, actually. This is an Italian man. He raped a sleeping woman, OK, which is obviously totally unacceptable. He's won the right to remain in the United Kingdom. And, of course, Reform UK and the Conservatives are saying, well, they told you we need to leave the ECHR. This is Hendrix Ekwin, 34. He carried out the attack in 2017. The victim was drunk and unconscious, but you still don't take advantage of someone who's drunk and unconscious. He made an application under the European Union settlement scheme, which would have let him stay in the country. Later that year, he was then convicted at Newcastle Crown Court. He was convicted of rape and jailed for 8 years. He continued to maintain his innocence, sought to blame the victim. Then he admitted, actually, he was guilty, and the judge now has granted his appeal against deportation because he said, and the judge said, he's learned his lesson.
Oh, despicable. I think that judge should have to look that poor woman in the eye.
I think the judge should be deported.
Yes. We have a huge problem at the moment with a judiciary that does not understand its job is to protect the British people. It's not to protect people that aren't from here. It's to apply the law and to actually make sure that the people who have done something terrible are punished. I don't understand why judges keep thinking that they're some kind of like social workers. They're not social workers.
Well, it's the liberal elite, isn't it? It's the glitterati, it's the Guardian reading, who all believe in the best of everyone. But, you know, at the end of the day, they work for us and we pay for them.
And I think there is a big problem that they are not accountable to the public. I think that is a huge problem, and I think it is that disconnect yet again between the people that govern the country and the people that live in the country, and they're not seeing the effect that it's having in places like Epping and around the country. We might now start to see a little bit of a shift in maybe in the judiciary as these migrants are starting to scatter throughout the country. It might actually be one of the few good things the government does. It's because a lot more of the country might wake up to the problems that other places are having.
I think that's right. Shabana Mahmood, meanwhile, says, oh, I'm going to implement a fairer spread of asylum accommodation as the government prepares to house more migrants in wealthy areas. This has been rumbling on all week, but she says she now wants to have a mixed model, apparently, of asylum accommodation, including large military sites, medium-sized buildings, such as old student apartments, and dispersal housing, such as bedsits and homes of multiple occupancy. She said it will take time to transition. The thing that really annoyed me when I read this morning, she said, I understand these things are a worry to people. No, it's not a worry. You are shoving people into the middle of our communities, decimating our society, and we don't want them.
Yeah, 100%. I have to admit, I was never really a fan of of closing the hotels because at least you knew where they were. At least there was a central point.
They still weren't ring-fenced.
Yeah, without a doubt, they shouldn't even be in the country. This is just moving the problem around the board. That's all the Labour Party are good at. They get to then say, well, we got them out of the hotels, which is what you wanted. They didn't quite understand that we want them out the country, not out of the hotel.
But even in the hotels and in Canary Wharf on the island, there was one particular hotel that was then fenced off. There were guards outside. You couldn't even see who was going in and out. And if you remember, they brought the illegal migrants in by coach in the middle of the night.
I'm still waiting for Dover to have somewhat of a media blackout policy that you can't report on this stuff with the boats physically coming in and out. I'm still waiting for that to happen because, you know, this idea that, by the way, that Shabana Mahmood is somehow a saviour, that somehow she's this great Home Secretary, please point to me an example of this. I think she's absolutely terrible. And don't forget, in the Kingdom of the Blind, the one-eyed man is king. But, I mean, like, she's the only person with a stick. That seems to be the thing.
To be fair to her, it looks like she's trying.
I mean, the bar is very low.
The bar is low, but I will give her the benefit of the doubt. But here's another story in The Sun today, our sister publication. You won't believe this. A Rwanda-style plan to remove failed asylum seekers to third countries is now being actively looked at by Labour, having actually ditched the Rwanda-style policy, or the Rwanda policy itself. Now, they said we were right to scrap the Rwanda scheme because it was not working and did not work. it was working, actually, and it also, we never really saw it reach its peak, its zenith. And now, of course, they're now looking at third country model solutions. Well, why didn't you carry on with Rwanda?
Yeah. Or if you didn't like Rwanda, pick a different country. What they did, they just abandoned the scheme entirely. It wasn't that they just didn't like the Rwanda as a nation. They didn't like the scheme entirely. I find it interesting that Rishi Sunak, when he actually brought this, really championed it, lots of other nations actually said, this is the way this is going to be. They actually said that Rishi Sunak was ahead of the curve on this stuff. If you look at the European Union, even America, places, they're having these schemes of having all this stuff dealt with in other countries before it gets to, you know, the home nation, which is not a preposterous idea. If you're not going to put them in camps or anywhere like that, you cannot have people that you don't know who they are, whether they're a threat to people, wandering around. You just can't.
Let me just put to you what I've just got from lots of people. Thank you for your messages. I haven't even asked the question yet. Michelle said, David, have you noticed the leaflet doesn't say these abhorrent crimes are wrong? It says they might affect your asylum claim. Yes, very, very good
point. That's a good observation.
And they say it may land you in prison. They're more concerned about the invaders than us. If you need yet more proof of this being driven by design, here it is. Soon they will admit us and tell us that it's good for us. Michelle, that's a cracking message.
This is what I'm saying about the tone of the pamphlet, the language that's used in it. You know, it's a great observation. It's not that this is wrong, you cannot do it. It's this might affect you in this way if you do it. Yeah. The way that it's put together is actually horrific, more than the actual concept of the pamphlet that it itself.
I agree, totally.
It's horrific.
And so many messages about this as well. Teresa says, hi, David and Peter. Is there a pamphlet for the indigenous people to lock up their women and children? My blood is boiling. I need a doctor. Peter in Northampton, thanks for that, by the way. The next move, I believe, from the government will be releasing a leaflet asking women and children to cover up more with the current state regarding immigration in this country. I wouldn't put it past the government to advise this. Neither would I. David, this one says the pamphlet that's being handed out to the illegals is a waste of time. None of them speak English. Although they say they do speak English, which is why they're coming to England. But anyway, it would be better off having a how to avoid being raped pamphlet and hand it out in schools and doctor's surgery so British people can protect themselves.
I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for that. And, you know, classes in school, how to protect yourself.
So just very quickly, why is this country the target for illegal immigration? They could choose any country, but they choose this one. Why?
Shangri-La. We give them everything. Why would you want to go anywhere else? You get doctors,
Why
hotel.
go anywhere else?
Why go anywhere else?
I mean, that's a great slogan for the Home Office, isn't it? Yeah. Come to the UK. Why go anywhere else?
The tourist board love it.
Let me ask you that. Why are all these illegal migrants coming to Britain? Why is Britain the target for illegal migration? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Harry and Meghan had no problem sitting across from Oprah Winfrey and unleashing on this family when the Queen was in the final days, weeks, and months of her life. Guess who was filming their Netflix docuseries where they accused an entire country of racism? Harry and Meghan, unbothered by the Queen's illness, unbothered by the fact that she was an elderly woman who, you know, should have been enjoying her twilight years, but was fearing what was to come from Montecito.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm joined by Peter Barnes. Now, Peter, this morning, when I woke up, I listened to the news headlines, and the one that also made me almost fall out of bed, Harry and Meghan are coming back to the UK despite hating this country and hating everything to do with it, and hating their family and hating all of us and hating everything. And yes, after years in America, Harry and Meghan look set to come back to Britain.
See, everybody wants to come here.
Everyone, yes. Why do better? With reports saying the couple are planning to relocate to Britain later this month, with Archie and Lilibet being enrolled at a British school for September. Now, no official royal role is planned, but the move certainly leaves that door open. Now, of course, Harry has made lots of comments over the years. I think we've got a clip that we can show you where he was mouthing off.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So, you know, I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do. And I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show, you know, my children my homeland.
And yet you're going to.
I know. He was always able to.
I can't say I'm jumping for joy.
No, I can't either. However, I'm going to be a little bit more generous than most people. I know. I think it's because I think the King is a lot more unwell than people make out to be.
So do I.
And I think that is what it is. I link it to the fact that the King and the Queen pulled back from royal duties and public appearances not so long ago. William seems to have stepped up into the royal, into the main role a little bit more. And now Harry's coming home. I think this is a son returning home because his father's not very well.
Do you? That's interesting.
I really do.
I mean, I think one of the other things, and also in many ways, I've done what they did. I went to California. It's a really tough place to make businesses work, but also it's so blinking vacuous living in California. And maybe they've just worked that out. Also, I'm not entirely sure that anything they've touched has gone very well.
No, they are the opposite of the Midas touch.
well, they do, don't they?
Really
I mean, I don't know how well As Ever is going, or with Love Meghan or whatever the latest trash that she's coming out with. But maybe, look, we'll be generous, shall we, at this point?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think everything they've done is horrific and terrible, but, you know, at the end of the day, I do think this is a family situation, and I try to look at it as a family.
Well, I get that, but also Ravek hasn't changed its decision about whether they get protection or not. That's the bit I don't understand. He said he doesn't feel safe, and now he feels safe, so we'll talk about that later. But anyway, white pupils. This is a shocking story, but we knew about this. It's only got worse. White children are the most likely ethnicity to enter no GCSE exams for the first time on record. 1 in 30 white pupils who reached year 11 last summer did not register for any GCSEs or equivalent qualifications. Essentially, white working-class boys have been ignored for far too long, and something needs to be done.
Oh, yes, without a doubt. And I think we were saying just before we came on that this has been an obvious story. We've known about this for so long, and now, yet again, we have the evidence. So what are people doing about it? It's really good having all these reports, but it's the next stage. How are we changing education? We've built an entire society that's obsessed with disparities, yet the most staggeringly obvious one that we've all known about, nobody's done anything about it for years. That's the thing that I find more annoying about these stories.
I just feel sorry for the kids.
I do. I
really
genuinely
do. Because they have no prospects then, and then also they sort of become disenfranchised, they turn to crime, they're then taken up by gangs. And actually, we owe it to white working class boys to make sure they do have those chances, that they do get a proper education.
Yeah, I think we owe it to every child in this nation, because if you want to fix everything, education is how you do it. I think we should be pumping billions. Schools should be palaces as far as I'm concerned. That's how you fix everything. You want to fix the economy, you want to fix social, all these problems. You use the next generation to fix it forward.
Well, of course, and then
we just don't do it.
And then also the economy thrives. Then we can pay for social care.
Exactly.
We can look after elderly people. I mean, honestly, you're right. It is literally the engine room of the country. This is interesting. Working in Keir Starmer's number 10 was unbearable, according to Sue Gray. Well, so can I, actually. So this is Sue Gray, the former Chief of Staff, says it was unbearable working in number 10. She says she didn't know what she was going to say was going to get leaked and all the rest of it. But this story, and I'll talk again about it later, but she was talking to the Political Currency podcast, and of course she was the most powerful advisor in number 10, if you remember. And she goes on to say, actually, there's a massive disparity between actually preparing for government or being in opposition and then actually running the thing, which I think we've seen yet again with this current bunch. But she was accused of having lost control of the senior team. There were all these leaks to the media and so on. She's playing the victim, but lots of other people are coming forward and saying, well, actually, she wasn't very nice, and she may well have been the problem.
Oh, she definitely was, without a doubt. I've met her a couple of times, and trust me, she gives the kind of demeanour of a librarian, but that lady carried a big stick, put it that way. She knew how to run things, and I think this is a really, really important point, is you cannot continue being in number 10 as a kind of campaigning election mode. You've got to get into governing mode. And Keir Starmer never did that.
And
Morgan McSweeney built a fantastic election campaign machine. He didn't build a governing machine. And it's interesting, actually. Yvette Cooper goes on to talk about this as well. She said it was dysfunctional. And this is what she's talking, both of these women are talking about, is that it's not just enough to keep pumping out press releases. You've got to make decisions. You've got to do something.
Oh, no,
and that's
like Andy Burnham, as I keep saying, he's minded to affect some policy. Well, get on with it.
Yeah, because Andy Burnham he's exactly the same. He's a campaigner. He's not a governor. It's not the same skill set. It's really not. I've been around number 10. Trust me, I've seen pandemonium for itself. This is what happens when you don't have people in control.
I would agree.
That is the big problem. You need, of all offices in the country, that's the one you need an iron fist in.
Yeah, I'd agree. Now, do you ever talk to computers the whole time? Like, for example, if you've got a hands-free phone, I say, call mum. Now, my car can't understand who my mum is and keeps trying to call someone else called Max or someone. And so there's a brilliant story here that patients in Rotherham have to talk to an AI interface instead of a receptionist, OK? So this is an AI GP receptionist. It's called Emma. It was designed by a company called Quantum Loop AI, and it's designed to understand a range of dialects and that patients can speak to them. The idea is you get a triage service so that it asks you questions all the time in a really irritating voice that you then try. But Emma can't speak Yorkshire. And in Yorkshire, in Rotherham, it can't understand what they're saying. The people are getting frustrated. They can't get through to anyone. And the company behind it are saying, well, I don't understand what's going wrong.
Well, I don't understand anybody from Yorkshire either. But I say that. No, I'm from Lancashire. I'm allowed to say that.
Oh,
it's in the blood.
That old rivalry.
Yeah, old rivalry, you know. War of the Roses, we won. But I will say that this is actually quite interesting, really, because it's about the ability to interface, the ability to react with these kind of amazing technologies, which I'm sure Emma is. But if you can't use it, it's pointless and it's useless. But yeah, I mean, there's the old skit, isn't there, of the guys trying to use from Scotland, trying to use a voice-activated lift. And they goes, we've been in here since 1982. Basically, because it doesn't move.
But it's true. Every time I say call mum and it says mumble.
Yes.
Then I try, no, mum, bull. And then anyway. So that's why I haven't phoned mum. That's my excuse.
That old chestnut.
I have actually. Now, there's another great story here, which is in the Daily Star, my favourite reading material. A woman popped to the bathroom, to have her ablutions, only to find a huge bat in her toilet bowl, which taking a dip. Now, the flying rodent, which was later nicknamed Louis, which seems a very inappropriate name for a bat, but anyway. He ended up in the lavatory after getting in through an open window, and apparently the bat's getting in, searching for water in hot conditions. Now, I know something about bats because I've had a problem in my house with poo. Little nuggets of poo. And so I called the pest man and I said, I think I've got rats. I've got rats again. And I live in the middle of the country, and he said, and he got the poo like this, and he rolls it, which obviously is what you do if you're a pest man. He rolls it and he said, those aren't rats. These are bats. and I've got all these bats upstairs.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, they're protected by law.
Oh, my family's very aware. We have the same problem.
And
we live in the back of a church.
And you can't do anything about them, can you?
Can't do anything.
You live in the Belfry?
Yeah, literally. Well, you know, Quasimodo. But no, we have the same problem. And it's quite interesting, really, about how we protect certain species, and yet other ones we just kind of, you know, here's a slaughterhouse as you go. But again, I find this story funny, that how big was the window? And how big was the bat?
The bat. So there's a picture of it in the paper, but it's. I mean, it's not that big.
Yeah.
I've got much bigger bats in my house.
All right, it's not a competition.
No, but they make a very big noise.
They're actually quite fun to watch at night.
I don't like them.
Do you not like them? No. We sit in the back garden. We watch them fly around.
So my mum, who's watching this, she had a massive bat problem in her house.
Yeah.
So that the bats came in, and then they do their toilet business, and the spare room was completely unusable because it absolutely stank. And so she then got Batman out, and Batman came out and said, well, you can't touch them by law.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is fit one-way return valves, so until the female of the species has the bat children, then once they're big enough, they leave, and you get your bedroom back.
Essentially, yeah. It's crazy that this is what you have to do, but... Yeah, I didn't realise bats were such a protected species until my father, he moans about the bats.
But what I would say, as Halloween approaches, I don't know if they're still away, but you see the silhouette of the bat gliding away from my house in the full moon. It's very Halloween-like.
We turned into the Joker now, haven't we?
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Peter Barnes, their political strategist. Right, lots more still to come. We're going to go back, actually, and talk about this illegal immigration story and what the Home Office is doing and what Peter said, which is essentially rubber stamping it with a Home Office stamp on it, saying, please don't rape women. Please make sure that actually women are treated equally and that you can't rape children in the United Kingdom. It is utterly, utterly unacceptable. Your thoughts after this break. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk with me, David Bull. The time 1:35. Let's go back to that immigration story because the phone lines have lit up once again as we talk about yet more illegal immigration stories. I mean, it is absolutely extraordinary what the Home Office has done. And when this dropped last night, I was absolutely gobsmacked by what I was reading. So the asylum seekers have been warned in an official government guidebook not to rape women or to beat women as well. It sets out the rules and expectations of living in Britain, which is going to be handed to asylum seekers as part of an education campaign. It warns if you have sex with someone without their consent, this is called rape. It's a 7-page booklet. It was published yesterday, and we know there have been a series of horrific rapes and sex attacks by asylum seekers. It warns new arrivals not to follow someone or block their path or make rude or offensive gestures. It goes on also to say do not make sexual comments to someone, even if you think it's a compliment. Do not whistle, do not make kissing noises at someone. And by the way, you can't have sex with children. There are no exceptions to this rule. Even if the child says yes, it is still illegal. What are we doing? On the line is Sam Ashworth-Hayes, who's Director of Research at Reform UK. Good afternoon, Sam.
Hi, David.
Really good to see you. What do you make of this? I mean, Peter and I were just saying, in many ways, the government now is complicit because the acknowledgement that there is a problem is here in black and white, in a document, stamped with the Home Office logo, which is essentially acknowledging pretty much for the first time we have a problem in this country and that migrants are coming over and behaving appallingly, raping and intimidating women.
I mean, it effectively shows a system that's run completely out of control. The position the government's taking is that they can't do anything. You can't say no to people who want to come here. You can't send them back if you do manage to say no. You can't stop the boats coming. So we have these incredibly feeble leaflets put out trying to change behaviour. And I mean, if you need this training, how are you meant to integrate into Britain? Who wants to have you as a neighbour? How are you making this country stronger? And it just shows that the interests of the British people are at the bottom of a very, very long list.
Well, I would agree with that. And also, maybe I can ask you the question I've been asking our viewers and listeners this afternoon. Why is Britain such a target for these illegal immigrants? They're going through Europe. Last time I looked, France was not an unsafe country, and yet they still want to come here. We obviously are a soft touch. The government keeps saying, well, we've closed another 13 hotels. We are only operating 160 out of 400 that were up and running. They think this is a great sort of advancement, but yet, as you say, they keep coming.
So with the hotels, what effectively happens is they close a hotel, and that's either because they've processed the claims, and we have an acceptance rate which is really quite high by European standards traditionally. I think it is still quite high today. Or they put them into HMOs, they put them into houses in the community, and we're still being put up by the government. It's just less visible. So it's very attractive to come here for that reason. And the second part of it is that we are quite a soft touch on illegal working. We do very few inspections. We don't have a robust regime. So you can come here. And I mean, the Telegraph did some fantastic reporting last year, where they basically had these people smugglers advertising, come to Britain, work illegally, you'll make a fortune, the government will pay for your accommodation, it will be fantastic. So we have this incredibly strong pull factor and incredibly weak enforcement, and we're not willing to do anything to stop the boats coming. So we're basically advertising ourselves to these smuggling gangs.
No, it's interesting you say the government can't do anything to stop it happening, because I think the government can do. Isn't it the fact that government chooses not to do something about it?
Yeah, sorry, I should rephrase. The government absolutely could do something to stop it if it wanted to. They can't because they have these left-wing ideas that they're subscribed to. They can't because of the makeup of their parliamentary benches.
Yes.
Like they're... Sorry, I should be clear. Yeah.
And Shabana Mahmood, I mean, in some ways, I will give her the benefit of the doubt. She is trying to do something. I feel she's swimming against the tide here. But now, even she is saying, we were right to cancel Rwanda, but now we're going to disperse these illegal migrants around the country. I mean, I mentioned Piddington again, 400 people in that village. I live in a small village. I know what it's like to live in a very tight-knit community. And then to have 1,200 illegal migrants shoved on your doorstep. I mean, it doesn't work on so many levels and metrics. And yet, as you say, they get given a bus and they're taken into the local town where they're allowed to go wandering around willy-nilly.
I mean, you know, imagine how you feel knowing what sort of leaflets these people are receiving on how to behave as well. So this again is kind of, it's almost like displacement activity, right? It's Labour can't stop the boats because Labour's MPs won't let them stop the boats. Another government would be able to do so.
OK, well, that is interesting. And also, I don't know whether you agree with me, but the language of this leaflet really made me incensed because it's a sort of friendly booklet advising you, oh, please don't rape our women, don't rape children, don't subject women to violence. Oh, and by the way, women have equal rights. You can't tell them what to do. it's not draconian. It should say these things are illegal, you will go to prison or you will be removed from this country. The tone is entirely wrong.
It's entirely wrong. And actually, the language is, I mean, like you say, it says you could go to prison. It could affect your asylum claim. Not it will. Not you will be punished. And I'd love to say I'm surprised by this, but I'm afraid I'm not, because last year there were asylum seekers standing outside a primary school. Parents were alleging they were filming children, and the local police force gave them training at the hotel, basically saying all of this stuff. So all that has happened, all that we have learned from this is that the government is basically doubling down on asking politely rather than actually enforcing reasonable standards of behaviour.
Yeah. And just in terms of Reform UK's policy, I mean, Chris Philp has made a great play of the fact. He said, oh, this is outrageous. We, the Conservative Party, will leave the ECHR. Well, you didn't do that in 14 years of being in power. Now, Reform UK has been very strong on leaving the ECHR. Is that really the linchpin around this, that you have to leave the ECHR before you get autonomy to get rid of illegal migrants, people who should not be in this country?
You have to make sure that our hands are not tied by international courts. We have to make sure we can remove people who need to be removed, and we have to make sure we can stop the boats in the channel, and that is the only way this is going to end.
So let's move on and just, if I may, touch on Operation Fortress, because this is Reform UK's policy. It was billed as the biggest ever naval operation to turn the boats back. The idea was to put these huge numbers of boats at the 12-mile line, send them back to France. France says that's absolutely illegal. Under Operation Fortress, it was said the Royal Navy, supported by civilian authorities, would intercept all migrant boats, transfer them to safe British vessels and return them to France or Britain. Now, I spoke to a captain, I think, or he may actually have been an admiral, but a commander of a Royal Navy warship yesterday who said these proposals are totally unworkable. You cannot put a Type 45 destroyer in the English Channel. It doesn't work. It will endanger life. The crews will not be held responsible for what might happen. So isn't this a bit of fanciful thinking?
No, not at all. I mean, if you read the report, it's been endorsed by all sorts of military figures with a great deal of experience. The plans have been fully worked out, and the exact logistics of doing so have been worked out as well. And there is a very comprehensive document available. So
why would a Royal Navy commander say that actually it's unworkable?
I would venture to suggest that there is a possibility he's looking at previous versions of plans which were put forward by Priti Patel in the past, which were unworkable. The difference with Reform's policy is that we have gone through the details and we have worked out the exact mechanism to do this properly.
OK, and then just in terms of Shabana Mahmood, she's also now talking about whether they will relook at a Rwanda-style scheme. I mean, I don't know what your view from Reform UK is, but mine certainly was that Rwanda started after a huge legal battle, maybe to show some sort of dividend. We saw migrants leaving Northern Ireland, going into the Republic of Ireland. We did, I think, deport maybe 3 people, but Keir Starmer then cancelled that immediately that he came into office. Wouldn't it have been more pragmatic and sensible to let it run its course and actually see whether it worked?
Well, quite, but I don't think pragmatic and sensible are words one associates with the Labour Party. But actually, it's actually quite interesting because what they're talking about seems to be only the failed asylum seekers. So the incentive to get into a boat is still there.
That is very true. There is a big difference here between what the Labour Party is saying, which is essentially, as you rightly say, it's failed asylum seekers. What the Conservatives said was all asylum seekers would be processed in Rwanda. Those that were true asylum seekers would remain. Those that were not would be deported.
So they've taken a scheme which they said won't work, watered it down further, and then sort of expecting us to believe they're actually going to do something serious.
Let's just move on to something else. So Reform UK held a press conference earlier today. This is Suella Braverman and also Richard Tice talking about something that I feel very passionately about indeed. This is apprenticeships. And the headline from this is Britain needs apprentices. I think Tony Blair, when he committed 50% of kids to go to university, made a terrible error. We need to ensure the trades are well stocked and staffed. We need those small employers to take on kids, to train them as apprentices. Just outline for us what Reform UK would do.
Of course. So this is part of our programme to help small business create jobs and young people to get valuable skills. And it's effectively a 30% credit on the wages of apprentices between 16 and 18 years old, and a £2,000 retention bonus paid 2 years after completion of an apprenticeship if you remain with your employer. And the aim of this policy is effectively to encourage young people to take up a valuable trade, to encourage businesses to offer these jobs out, and to encourage people to stay with their employer and keep developing skills. And it's the first step in the wider programme to make sure that we have the skills we need to be a competitive economy.
And bringing this policy to fruition, how much consultation was there with people, say, who are plumbers, electricians, carpenters, small business owners?
I mean, there are extensive policy conversations behind pretty much everything we do.
Right. But is that a change from early days at reform? Because the criticism has been that some of the policies in the early days were sort of written on the back of a cigarette packet.
I mean, for the whole of the time I've been here, it's been how we conduct things very thoroughly. But I'm also a recent arrival.
I know that, actually. And just in terms of the numbers of apprentices, and I mean, I think that people around the country will think this is a great idea. But clearly, the other thing you have to do is to reduce employer national insurance contributions, because only then will those small businesses feel empowered to create the apprenticeships so that they can go on to employ them, because otherwise they're hamstrung before they even start.
Yes, I mean, and I think Rob Jemrick has done a very good job of outlining our policy to lower the jobs tax on British workers and fund it with a levy on migrant workers. So,
and how do you? I mean, reform has been through stormy waters recently. There's a lot of discussion about whether there is control at the top, that there's dissent. We saw Tim Montgomery doing the media rounds. We talked about that yesterday, and yet the polling for Reform UK seems to have recovered.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're the only party who is putting forward credible plans to deliver what the British public actually wants. And, you know, there's always going to be a great deal of noise from the establishment because we are pushing against 20 years of failed consensus. But I think we're moving in the right direction.
And Sam, if the election was called tomorrow, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Sam, really good to talk to you. Sam Ashworth-Hayes there, who's Director of Research at Reform UK. I'm asking this afternoon about immigration once again. The government endorsing the fact that they know illegal migrants are coming to this country. Now they're telling them that in a civilised country like the United Kingdom, you have to have behaviour. You can't go around raping women, that women are equal in this country. You cannot rape children. Even if the minor consents to having sex, you cannot then have sex with them. What does that say about this country? And also, the other part to that question is, why are these illegal migrants so desperate to come to this country? Now, yesterday, people were saying, well, it's because they speak English and we speak English, but they don't speak English, many of them. And when you actually take the time to talk to them, they can't understand what you're saying. So I don't buy that as an argument. Is it because we're too soft? Why are illegal migrants being drawn increasingly to the United Kingdom? The number 0344 499 1000. The calls are charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. After the break, it's your turn. Your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
Zia Yusuf is one very, very popular amongst the base, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons he is popular is because he speaks from the hip. He speaks in a language and with an attitude that is shared in pubs up and down the country, but not necessarily in Westminster seminars.
Do you think that he gets away with being a loose cannon, whereas Tim Montgomery doesn't? Tim Montgomery gets suspended, Zia Yusuf gets hugged closer.
There's a big difference. Tim is an ordinary party member. He is not a spokesperson. He is not an elected member. He's not on the board. He literally has no role in the party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I was talking about this leaflet that's been produced by the British government. Let's have a look at it if we can. This is a booklet that they have produced for migrants, illegal migrants. They are understanding behaviours and expectations in the UK. Do not rape women, it says in it. It also says women are equal in the United Kingdom. It goes on to say do not rape children. Even if the kid consents, you cannot have sex with them. And then Betty makes a very good point here. And I'll just, before I go to Betty's message, it says rape is a serious crime in the UK. You could go to prison. You could lose your support and accommodation, but it does go further, and it says, and it will affect your asylum claim. Now, where's Betty's message gone? So Betty, I've lost her now, but Betty basically said words to the effect that it was the wording, here you are there, David, in most second and third world countries could means you can buy yourself off the charge. The only laws they respect are the death penalty or losing a hand. The tonality of that document is absolutely ridiculous. Daniel is on the line. He's a new caller from Chequerfield. Good afternoon to you, Daniel.
Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, are you
Hey.
okay?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. What's on your mind?
Oh, perfect. So I've just, I've woke up this morning and I've seen it, all in advertisements about these leaflets what have been distributed out by Home Secretary, and it just makes your blood boil,
Yeah.
I mean, I've got two girls myself, one's 4, others 2, and it's just like, I mean, it's just a basic question, why does Home Office feel it's necessary to explain something as basic as rape, sexual consent and sex with children being illegal?
Well, because these people are coming from countries where those norms and cultural values don't exist.
Exactly. But then it's like we're letting them into this country. Why? It's just unfathomable. And I just can't get over it. I really can't. It's just like, what are we meant to do? We seem to be protesting. There's, nothing's working. You do peaceful protest, nothing works, and it's just like, why am I paying my tax? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? Why? It's just.
Well, I agree, and I think this is the frustration that you and other parents around the country and grandparents are feeling, which is it feels like the British government is almost working against us. You've had 3,000 illegal migrants since Andy Burnham came to power. 15,000 have arrived this year so far. We're not processing them. We're allowing them to sit here, not even having an initial application decision, and then they sit here and then they essentially will then complain about their decision and they will appeal that decision. And yet, once again, the British people are put last.
Yeah, we are. And this is the thing, it's like, it's just going to continue to get even more worse. I think in future, there's going to be a lot more riots going off.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do. You talk to everyday people, from work, and everybody's concerned about it. And what we're meant to do next, we're meant to just go down to Downing Street and demand, a general election or, just for things to change.
What would you do if you were in power?
If I were in power, the first thing I'd do is, I'd make sure that people of this country, like, who are born and bred here, are put first. I certainly wouldn't be, testing waters about, let's just allow some illegal immigrants, to come in. I get that. I get these people what really are struggling, but every day you see it in news, these are men what are fighting age, and you don't see women and children, and it's just like you said, it's just that basic moral compass. You don't harm women, you don't harm children. Surely that's got to be something what's just bred into a normal a normal person, you know, and like I'm trying to think as well. If I was an illegal immigrant and I'd come to Great Britain where I'm under this leaflet out saying please do not, you know, rape our women and children, like what's going through somebody's mind when they're reading that? You know, it tells me it's like this country's weak. You know, I can do what I want. I can, you know, it's just a joke, you know, and like you're getting all these sentences and things, you know, like for raping women. I'd put it as a start, you know, you're taking something from that woman, what she's never going to get back. Right, well, we're going to take you. It should be a life sentence.
Yeah.
You know, you're waking up at night time as a woman, you know, and you're scared to go out. You know, you're constantly paranoid. I don't know. It's silly, and I'm just in constant fear, thinking, you know, when I'm going to drop my children off, and like, you know, I'm then looking at somebody who's foreign, and potentially in the back of my mind, I'm then thinking, oh, you know, are they going to harm my children? You know, why are they here? And then it puts it on good people, you know, what do need is help, and that's what it's doing to me, anyways. You know, it's making me question every foreign national kind of thing, you know, and it's just how weak are we, you know, to be handing leaflets out advising not to rape children. I mean,
it's pretty low if we've got to that particular position, isn't it? Daniel, thank you so much for calling. Do call again. Eleanor is on the line from Comber in Northern Ireland. Good afternoon to you.
How do you do, David? Thanks for taking the call.
Oh, no, absolute pleasure. Your thoughts this afternoon?
Well, I think because the government is throwing us onto the bus and women are less now to defend themselves, and we haven't got anything to defend ourselves with. But in America, they're allowed to use mace. They have those little electric prods.
Yes.
Around, and it's just enough to stun them or to spray something to get their hands off you so as you can run away.
So would you like to see that implemented here?
Well, if there's nothing else going to help us or protect us, I think that we're going to have to take it into our own hands.
I mean, so I get the sense that you don't think the government is there to protect you.
Well, as far as the illegals is, I mean, I don't have much to do with it. You know, I'm sort of a distance from it. But, you know, I worry about my friends' beautiful daughters. I worry about my beautiful nieces. And the advice I give them, right or wrong, is to carry a little hairspray, we travel hairspray. And if anybody grabs them, you spray that as hard as you can.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say good advice, but it certainly seems that. I mean, it goes on to say, a husband, father or brother should never stop a woman from working or studying, control what she wears or where she goes, stop her seeing her family or friends, or make decisions for her without her agreement. I cannot believe we have to spell this out.
Well, you know, it's above my pay grade what the government are doing with this crisis.
Nothing is the honest answer, it seems.
So I'm coming in from, if nothing's being done and hasn't been done for a number of years, even a decade or more, surely to goodness, the women and young girls should have something to protect themselves.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's a very good idea indeed. Eleanor, thank you very much indeed for your company. Lots of messages coming in. Paul has sent a message from Australia. He said, look, David, I'm sick of hearing Wets saying why they can't do it instead of how it can be done. I live in Australia. We turned the boats back within a week of setting it up. Reform should bring in Tony Abbott. He will help sort the whole thing out. I'm embarrassed to say I'm British. We are a total laughingstock. 100%. And France is playing us. I talked about this yesterday. £1.1 billion we've given to France. And what have we seen as a sort of in terms of results? Pretty little for £1.1 billion. Keep all those messages coming in, please. I'm asking this afternoon, why is Britain the target for illegal immigration? Why not other European countries? That is the question this afternoon. 0344 499 1000. Now, after the break, we're going to move on to politics. There's some really good stories around. Working in Keir Starmer's number 10 was unbearable, said Sue Gray, and civil servants can be more productive at home. That's according to Angela Rayner. What utter tosh. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon to you. 2 o'clock now on Thursday, August the 20th. David Bull in for Ian Collins. Thank you very much indeed for all your messages. Let's have a look at the news headlines of this hour. Well, asylum seekers arriving in Britain are being handed Home Office booklets explaining that rape is illegal and that men and women here have equal rights. And that has prompted questions over why such basics need spelling out at all. Well, great news. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are reportedly planning to move back to Britain, with Archie and Lilibet enrolled at a British school from September, though there are no current plans for royal duties to resume. And white pupils are now the most likely ethnicity to skip GCSEs entirely, with 1 in 30 entering no exams whatsoever at all. The first time white students have topped this league table since records began. And those are the news headlines this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your company. We've been talking about this Home Office pamphlet, which is quite unbelievable, which is targeted at illegal migrants, saying, oh, you cannot rape women in this country. Also, men and women have equal rights. By the way, you can't rape children, even if the children consent. It is absolutely extraordinary. It's been translated into multiple languages. And as Peter was saying at the beginning of the programme, it sort of dilly-dallies around. It doesn't say don't rape. It actually says it could affect your asylum application. I mean, the whole thing is utterly crazy. The Prime Minister has stood behind the Home Office, but essentially it's the admission of failure by the Home Office, which is that we have a major problem in this country. We have people, young fighting-age men, coming to this country from very different cultures who believe that they can carry on acting as they would in their own country. And I think the British public are saying we've had enough of this. They need to be detained and deported unless they are true asylum seekers, and yet nothing seems to happen, even though we've given 1.1 billion quid to the French. Let's move on now and talk about more politics. Joining me now is Fraser Myers, who's Deputy Editor of Spiked Online. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to see you again. Lots of political stories around this afternoon. Let's start with this one, which is Sue Gray. Now, there's a blast from the past, isn't there? Sue Gray, who was Keir Starmer's former Chief of Staff, has lifted the lid on how unbearable it was working in Number 10. She says she feared her conversations were being recorded by colleagues seeking to leak her remarks to the media. Now, she was the most powerful advisor in Downing Street. She resigned in 2024, and she was highly critical of their working environment under Keir Starmer. But I seem to remember she was paid more than the Prime Minister. Also, when you listen to other people who worked in Number 10 at the same time, they say, well, their recollections may vary.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Sue Gray makes some points that do ring true. You know, her talking about how unbearable it was to work under Keir Starmer. We've heard from many other people that he was a terrible, terrible manager, just not good dealing with personnel. People would sit in silence for extended periods. He was unable to make decisions. He was called, his premiership was called passive by many insiders. So that's certainly true. But we can't let Sue Gray get away with rewriting history and presenting herself as the victim here. She was someone who is expected to come up with a plan for the first 100 days of a Labour government, and a plan came there none. People were absolutely aghast to discover that there was basically nothing to the work that she'd been doing for, I think, about 6 months in the run up to Starmer getting into Downing Street. And also, I mean, there are a lot of quite interesting and scurrilous stories put about by her, maybe unfairly by some of her enemies, but I think no one would be able to forget the time when she supposedly kept moving Morgan McSweeney's desk further and further away from the Prime Minister's office so that she could bend Mr. Starmer's ear.
Oh, no. So she refutes that. She says, she says that she didn't try and move him. She said, I can't believe all you boys are in such a small room. I need to find you a bigger room. Here's a bigger room. It just happens to be about 3 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that she had the best of intentions when doing that. And yeah, people will recall the huge rows that she had with Morgan McSweeney. He obviously won out in the end. But even Tony Blair was actually called on to advise Starmer not to hire her because, she was a civil servant, kind of apparatchik. She was a creature of the Whitehall machine, which actually, really is exactly the opposite thing you want at the heart of government. You want someone who's going to stick the boot into Whitehall to change the way things operate, not someone who is actually a creature of the blob. And so when Tony Blair was asked to intervene and he said no, Starmer's got to find out for himself that she's no good. So I think, there's a lot of blame to go around on all sides.
Yeah, I mean, also, under Keir Starmer, of course, it was a revolving door, wasn't it? People kept coming and going. The staff changed the entire time. You mentioned that they didn't have a plan for government, but actually, if I think back to the manifesto, they didn't even have a manifesto for the election.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Keir Starmer was pursuing what a lot of journalists called at the time the sort of Ming Vase strategy during the election. Just basically don't say anything that could possibly offend someone, and eventually we'll get in because we're not the Tories. And it really didn't take long for that plan to unravel. And that can't all be laid at the feet of Sue Gray. A lot of it has to go at the feet of Starmer himself, who... let's not forget, this is a man who believed in absolutely nothing, had zero vision for the country, didn't really know why he wanted or needed to be Prime Minister, other than perhaps the idea that he thought he'd be good at it. It turns out that he wasn't. He was incapable of making decisions. He was U-turning every 5 minutes. The decisions that he did make were catastrophic and often very authoritarian. We shouldn't let him get away with some of those aspects of his premiership.
Yes.
So, a disaster all round, and Labour have done well to junk him.
Well, I mean, the other bit that I don't understand is there are rumours that Andy Burnham is going to bring Sue Gray back into government. Why would you do that?
Yeah, talk about learning, the wrong lessons from the catastrophe. I think, and Andy Burnham, I just wonder, Andy Burnham likes to please people. I just wonder if she might have asked him once and he'd have just said yes to get out of having an awkward conversation. I seriously doubt that he has so little political acumen that he'd want to bring her back. But who knows? Stranger things have happened in politics. Worse decisions have been made than this. So, yeah, maybe the return of Sue Gray.
You mentioned there that Keir Starmer didn't believe in anything. He was a terrible communicator. I mean, it was so boring to listen to him. Andy Burnham is a better communicator, without a doubt. I don't think he believes in very much either. And when you look at these initial policies he's rolled out, they don't really mean anything. And the one thing that no one else seems to have picked up on, but when he was talking about Rosebank and Jackdaw, he says, I minded to approve them, like looking for the public to vote. Should we vote yes for Rosebank and Jackdaw or no for... as Prime Minister, you have to have a vision for the country. Now, either you believe that we should have Rosebank and Jackdaw or you don't. Now, which is it, Andy?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, Andy is just as much as a flip-flopper as Starmer. He's kind of Keir Starmer in jeans, the sort of cool... dad dancing version of Keir Starmer, if you like. And, I'll give you another example of that. Think of the catastrophe over the early release scheme. Burnham hasn't been able to say, we definitely will not release Andrew Harper's killers. He keeps saying, every couple of days, I'm confident that we won't have to. Well, these aren't really the words of a leader. These aren't someone who's been able to take an issue, grip it, make the right decision and move on. So I think he does have many of the same faults, but at least, he doesn't bore us to tears whenever he opens his mouth.
Well, that's true, but the parallel is very striking, actually, which is they were not prepared for government, and they've worked out that actually being in opposition is very different to governing. Andy Burnham has suddenly worked out that being Mayor of Manchester is very different to being Prime Minister.
Absolutely. Suddenly you have to deal with contentious issues like immigration, for instance, rather than just talking about buses or, your favourite Smiths song. So these are issues where he has flip-flopped all over the place. Andy Burnham on if you just take migration, last week he said, after the mega dinghy arrived, he said, we must stop the boats. We absolutely have to see an end to this. This is someone who only a few years ago was saying that migrants should be able to claim benefits from day one, that refusing access to public funds for people who are born abroad is immoral. Take the trans issue. He's taken just about every position on that. On Brexit, he's flip-flopped. When you're Prime Minister, you have to be able to make decisions and you need to be able to stand by them, and they need to be coherent within a sort of worldview or broader vision that you're trying to convey to the country. Neither of those two prime ministers had that. I mean, you know, unfortunately, the last prime minister with a vision was Liz Truss, but that wasn't quite the right vision for the country, I think it's fair to say, after that disaster.
I mean, one could talk about delivery and also whether she briefed the markets and all that kind of thing. But let's move on to another great politician, Angela Rayner. She's claimed that civil servants can be more productive working from home. There are 3,800 civil servants who never, ever go to the... we're paying for the 3,800 people never to go to the office, including 71 in the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government. She says, working at home is far more productive. No, it isn't. But here's the thing. She then says, well, they have lower rates of absence. Well, of course they do, because they're at home.
They don't need to declare.
They don't need to be at home, do they? Because they're already at home.
I'll tell you what. I mean, it is. I think it is bad for the economy, bad for productivity. But it has been fantastic news for hairdressers, nail salons, the golf course. Never have so many of these places been full on a weekday afternoon. Of course, you're absolutely right. If you work from home, you can get away with being absent at any time you choose. Civil service, I mean, we need to get back to the idea that being a civil servant, working for the government, is seen as a vocation, as a calling. It's not simply a job. It's not as well paid as being in business, and maybe that's a shame. Maybe it should be better paid. But it's about serving your country, and you can't serve your country from the sun lounger. And we've seen this, you know, whenever there's been a crisis. I mean, probably the worst example was, do you remember when the fall of Kabul at the end of when we left Afghanistan? And every top civil servant, all of the ministers as well, were all on holiday. And they all knew that this was coming as an event. This should have been in the team's calendar, but it wasn't. I find it absolutely baffling. And, you know, Angela Rayner says she's seen surveys showing or studies that show that people can be more productive working from home. Those are always self-reported. So I saw one that said 46% of workers say they are more productive when they work from home. But it's like, well, of course they're going to say that. They're not going to say I've been slacking off, you know, lying in bed watching soaps all day. Of course they're not.
Well, I agree with you. Do you not remember, though, Angela Rayner, when she was under Keir Starmer, she tabled this sort of right to switch off, that you could just switch... I mean, you try telling anyone who runs a private business that you can just switch off. I mean, it's relentless, isn't it? When you're self-employed, you answer emails over the weekend, you pick up the phone at 9 o'clock at night. That's just what you do.
Yeah, because there are emergencies, and you know, real life doesn't stop at the end of the working day. And you know, of course, people should have a. You shouldn't be bothered if your boss is bothering you day in, day out. You know, out of hours, and you know, you're not in a particularly well-paid job. I think that people have every reason to complain about that. But to draw such a hard line of having a right to switch off. I mean, incidentally, it's interesting that proposal did end up being dropped.
It did.
You know, she did see sense on that after a few stern words from businesses, you know, saying just how utterly impractical such a thing would be. But yeah, you know, I think their attitude, a lot of Labour ministers, I mean, let's go back to Keir Starmer, for instance. You know, he was a kind of part-time Prime Minister. He would insist on switching off at 5 p.m. On a Friday night.
I think it was Thursday, but yes.
Or Thursday, you know, and say, this is my family time. And, OK, everyone deserves a bit of time with the family, but being Prime Minister, being Deputy Prime Minister, being in an important role in the civil service, these are not normal jobs. They make demands of your life in ways that working, you know, in a supermarket or something doesn't. And it's really, really striking that people don't see that anymore. They lack that sense of duty, and that's probably why things are going wrong.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with working in a supermarket. May I just add to that?
Absolutely nothing.
Yes, good. Just picking you up on that.
I'm just saying that, you know, if you did work on the supermarket, you wouldn't want your boss, you know, calling you all day. You wouldn't be expected to.
Well, you wouldn't pick it up, would you?
You wouldn't pick it up. Yeah.
Well, let me just. I mean, it would be remiss of me not to talk about Reform UK. It's been all over the papers. Tim Montgomery is obviously, I wouldn't say lashing out, but he's certainly said some harsh comments about the leadership of Reform UK. Obviously, I was very close to what was going on. There's a great article in The Spectator saying Reform UK is beginning to resemble a laboratory test for the idea that every party run by Nigel Farage is unhappy in the same way. It talks about UKIP and the Brexit Party. A highly dominant leader exists at the centre of a court, which is what Tim talks about, with extreme tensions between loyalist long marchers and activists, between insurgency and respectability, and between campaigning and preparing for government. Here, this is the, where's this, Daily Mail. Nigel urged to pick a side after Reform infighting intensifies. Do you get a sense that this is damaging the polling? The reason I ask that is because the latest poll came out today showing that actually Reform UK is now back at the top of the polling, and that if there was a snap election, they would go on to win a majority, albeit smaller than it would have been some months ago. What's your take?
Yeah, I think there is a tendency for people in SW1 in the lobby to sometimes overemphasise the impact that these stories can have. You know, Tim Montgomery, who's had a very public falling out with the party, you can understand his reasons, but he's not an MP. He's not a senior minister. He's not the deputy leader or something.
He's not
like
even
that.
on the board of the party.
Exactly. And so, yes, if Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef were to have an almighty falling out and the party were to split on those lines, that would be a big problem for Reform UK. Just as, you know, the splits in the Tories, where you literally half of the MPs, you know, would try to bring down the government during the Theresa May years. Divided parties like that, you know, really cannot, you know, will simply fall, and the public will look elsewhere. I don't think it's either at that level internally, and I don't think the stature of the figures necessarily are enough to warrant real panic in the Reform camp.
Can I just ask you about Reform's policy? They had a press conference earlier on today talking about apprenticeship, something I feel very strongly about. Tony Blair said 50% of kids need to go to university. I don't agree. And Reform has said Britain needs apprentices. And what they are offering here is for any SME a 30% wage credit on the wages of apprentices that they take on from 16 to 18. That will save each SME about £4,000 per apprentice. And then also, if the company keeps the apprentice on, I think it's for 2 years, they then get a bonus of £2,000 per worker. Good or bad idea?
I think that's a good idea. Anything that incentivises companies to take up apprentices, to train people, not just young people, in fact, but also anyone who lives in the UK. Whereas I think for too long we've had the sort of tap that companies have been able to turn on, or the government's been able to turn on, of mass migration, you know, take people cheaply from abroad. Really, we need to start training people up with skills. There's been some discussion as well about technical education. You know, the Labour Party had their own policies on that they introduced a few weeks ago. I do worry that, you know, this issue comes up once every few months, or maybe once a year, and it tends to get forgotten about because, you know, understandably, lots of people in the political class, media class, had a very different education. It gets brought up now and again, and I wonder if there's not enough follow-up on are we improving the technical schools enough? You know, is it actually, we want people to have a technical education. I think that's really important. I think it should be seen as an equally, if not better, route to a career than certainly some universities. But is there enough political focus on it? You know, will it just drift off the headlines in a few weeks' time? That would be my worry.
And of course, actually, I'm just thinking back to Andy Burnham. We're coming out of recess, I think, in 11 or 12 days or something like that. And then Andy Burnham really will find out what it's like to be Prime Minister at that point, won't he?
Absolutely, yeah. He's had the luxury of, you know, basically everyone being on their summer holidays. There's no Parliament to wrangle. He's not had to pass any contentious legislation. You know, the wheels could start to come off Andy Burnham pretty quickly when he has to deal with thorny issues like welfare reform, PIP. There are reviews being done at the moment that are going to come out on that, how to cut and reform those. And of course, the first budget, you know, that could be absolutely, if people are asked for the third year in a row to pay even more taxes for a public sector that they know is failing, that they don't feel that they're getting anything out of, you know, for an NHS that doesn't work despite being, you know, lavishly funded, for benefits for people who, you know, may not really be as deserving as is expected, giving money to even more asylum hotels. That is really, really going to wind up the country a great deal. So, you know, and then on the other hand, if he proposes cuts to overspending, as we have at the moment, that's going to wind up Labour MPs. So he's going to be in a real bind, I think.
I think you're right as well. Fraser, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. That's Fraser Myers, their Deputy Editor of Spiked Online. Keep all your messages coming in, please. I'm asking, why is Britain the target for all this illegal immigration? Why are we not doing anything about it? What's the solution? It just goes on and on and on. And, of course, this is on the back of the leaflet, which has been produced by the Home Office. We'll talk more about that after this break. This is Talk.
Zia Youssef is one very, very popular amongst the base, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons he is popular is because he speaks from the hip. He speaks in a language and with an attitude that is shared in pubs up and down the country, but not necessarily in Westminster seminars.
Do you think he gets away with being a loose cannon, whereas Tim Montgomery doesn't? Tim Montgomery gets suspended, Zia Youssef gets hugged closer.
There's a big difference. Tim is an ordinary party member. He is not a spokesperson. He is not an elected member. He's not on the board. He literally has no role in the party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Pretty incensed by the leaflet from the Home Office. Darius, good. Oh, hello, Darius. How are you? Darius Roger Hutchinson. How much is this leaflet going to cost the taxpayer? Dr. David, I most certainly hope this new Model Citizen Home Office booklet aimed towards asylum seekers gives at least some reference towards how much in pounds can be shoplifted at anyone sitting in order for the police not to be called. Every useful handbook needs this inclusion. That's Chris, very droll, from Skipton. Andrew's on the line from Hertfordshire. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Good afternoon, David. I'd say that first hour, you and I think it was Peter, that's one of the best hours of radio I've heard in a long while.
Thank you. That's very, very kind.
Very objective, very good. The reality of this situation is horrific. So what the government is saying is that they know that people are coming into the country. They know that women and children are actually now vulnerable. They've accepted it. But the most chilling line was the line that you read out about sex with underage people.
Yeah.
What it didn't say there was, and if you read it out again once you've finished with me, it's amazing. What it doesn't say there is this is illegal. You will go to prison for this, and you'll be deported. But your guest was brilliant. The tonality of this is it's like you're giving someone a menu in a McDonald's for the options.
That's right.
It's not saying this is wrong, and it's all right for you and me, David, because we're male.
Well, let me just tell you, it said this booklet will help you understand what is expected of you, not this is the law. As you say, if you break this, you will go to prison, you will be deported, you will never come back. It doesn't say any of that.
No, and it's easy for you and me because we're males, but every woman and girl and child in this country, their lives have changed exponentially forever because the government accepts that people that are coming into this country are coming in and can rape and murder people. It's beyond farce.
But it says rape is a serious crime in the UK. You could go to prison, so please don't do it. Let me just pause you for the moment. I want to play you a clip, actually. This is the Prime Minister responding to all the criticism of this booklet, and there is a lot of criticism of this booklet. Let's hear what he had to say.
As a government, we have a very clear principle. If you break UK law, you will be removed from the country, and we have seen that in relation to immigration, where removals are significantly up. I'm currently working to ensure that foreign national offenders who can be removed from the prison system are removed from that system. So it follows that if we're taking this approach, people are made it's made explicitly clear what the UK law is and what the societal norms of the UK are, and that's why this approach is being taken.
Andrew, your thoughts?
You just have to take a step back. That man has no mandate. He spoke for a moment and he actually said nothing.
Nothing?
There is nothing. He actually said nothing. It was what's called a word salad. What he needs to say is, women and children in this country, we will resolve this. We are going to put these people in camps. You can't come to this country. We don't know who you are. We don't know your sexual health. I hate to think what these diseases potentially some of these things are bringing in, and I mean that from a sexual point of view.
Repeat that. Sorry, you dropped off.
Yeah, I worry what diseases, sexual diseases, these people could be carrying when they come into the country, because they aren't tested for that, are they?
That I don't know. I know there was discussion about testing them. I don't know, is the honest answer. I will find out. But really good to talk to you, Andrew. Thank you very much. Martin's on the line from Shropshire. Martin, let me just start by asking you, has the Prime Minister got control of this situation?
Of course not.
No. So we just heard from the previous caller there. That was a bunch of word salad. It was nebulous dribble, and it didn't say anything. I mean, he said this is the right approach to be taking. It's, you know, when you look at this book, it's like someone explaining. It's like one of those health guides actually explaining safe sex, trying to explain that you need. The wording and the tonality is entirely wrong, isn't it?
From what I've been hearing on the radio, there's nothing in there except, please don't do it or we'll slap your wrists.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it says, you do not have sex with children. The legal age of consent in the UK is 16. That means that anyone under the age of 16 is considered a child and cannot legally agree to have sex. So please don't do that. And even if they say, yes, you can't do that anyway, I mean, it hardly... And then you've got the rebuttal from some of the asylum seekers who are saying, well, in my country, we can do that. I want to marry you. This was one asylum seeker said to a 14-year-old, I'm going to have a baby with you, and then you and you and you to her friends.
Well, beggars belief, to be honest. I mean, most normal males understand that. You know, anything you just do not touch. I wouldn't even dream of it, personally.
So what is the government playing at here?
I actually phoned up about
sorry.
why you said, why are people coming? Or,
right,
you know,
well, you tell... Why are they coming?
Well, but apart from the obvious of, like, it's a free run and it's the land of milk and honey, but the bigger and the biggest question ever is why isn't the government stopping them? Why didn't the government previously stop them? What is going on in their heads to let these people keep coming?
And what's the answer?
You wouldn't want to know my answer.
I would.
You would, right. OK. Personally, if it was me, I'm a fully paid up member of Reform, so I'm rooting for Nigel. I'd kick them all out. They're not wanted here. They're not bringing anything into this country but grief and misery.
And so I mentioned Operation Fortress. This was the policy from Reform the other day about sticking the Navy in the Channel, turning the boats back. And then I spoke to a naval commander yesterday who said it's just not workable.
I'm actually ex-Royal Navy. Yes, because of so much of maritime law. I'm not up as high. I wasn't up as high as the commander. The trouble is, if they knock one, you'll have the ECHR all over the place. You sunk that dinghy on purpose. This is what you're up against. There's got to be a way of turning them round. France has got to take them back. They've got to bear the brunt of this. We've given them money. They do nothing. Let's finish the 100-year war with them.
Good point, Martin. Really, really good to talk to you this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Right, we'll go to a break. Now, some amazingly good news for you this afternoon. Harry and Meghan are coming back to the country. Woo! This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Right, some really stunning news for you this afternoon. He lied. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are planning to move back to Britain. This is according to multiple media outlets. Now, the family intends to relocate from the US later this month. I thought they hated this country. Anyway, they're going to relocate from the US later this month to a private non-royal residence thought to be outside London. Now, Prince Archie 7 and Princess Lilibet 5, they're the kids, are enrolled to start at a British school in September. Now, there are no current plans for either the Duke or Duchess of Sussex to reprise their official working roles within the royal family. However, the move raises the prospect they could do so in the future. Now, the King didn't even know about this, apparently. He was only informed on Sunday. And apparently, when the Sussexes visited the King in Highgrove, that was back in, July, they didn't even talk about it. I mean, he was clearly pleased. The relationship between Harry and the King has definitely thawed. The relationship between Harry and William clearly hasn't, from what we understand. Now, here's the thing that I don't understand. I thought Harry said it was too dangerous to come to this country. Now, if he isn't changed his position and if he isn't doing any royal engagements, then his security detail doesn't change. Now, RAVEC, which is the organisation looking at the royal protection and what he's entitled to, hasn't changed its mind either. What I don't understand is how he suddenly thinks the UK is safe to come back to this country. Now, is it because her venture has failed miserably in the United States? Is it because they're unhappy? Is it because they actually want to be near their family? Is it because the King is actually, this is what Peter said, the King is actually much sicker than we first thought? I don't know is the answer. Charlie Ray, the former royal editor of The Sun, joins me now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David.
What is going on here? Do you know, honestly, this morning I heard that headline that Harry and Meghan were coming back. I nearly fell out of bed.
Well, yesterday there were, we knew something was going to happen yesterday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. We knew there was going to be a big announcement. We didn't know exactly what it was, but it was going to be huge. and of course at 10 o'clock last night. And it's interesting that practically everybody who carried this on their front pages is claiming a world exclusive.
Yeah.
Just, everybody had been given the same information. Stand by. Now, you've posed a large number of questions, which are the same questions that we're all posing. So let's try and get to grips with some of them. In terms of royal duties, they won't be performing any royal duties, and they certainly won't be performing any royal duties in the near future if they are still involved in their own money-making exercises, like Meghan's got her cooking, whatever, or making jam, selling jam, or
as ever.
I'm assuming the boat that comes over is going to be bringing over a whole load of jam to the country that we haven't had before. But
do you know that jam is 12 quid a pot?
I know.
Yeah.
Don't I know it? And the other big question is the security, David.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. RAVEC, the organisation which deals with security for various people, has said, no, you ain't getting it. He has said Britain is too much of a dangerous country to come back. It is all very, very strange what has happened. I do not believe it's because the king is not as well as we expect.
Okay.
I don't believe that, because only yesterday we had Camilla on a programme with Maggie's, the cancer charity, saying what it was like for relatives. Okay, she didn't give away any details, and we haven't had any real details of his cancer, but he looks pretty good whenever we've seen him on royal duties at the moment. Signs. I think there are people out there who believe that they suddenly developed a medical degree and can tell from a vast distance how ill he is or not. So, but it's interesting that what is interesting to me is that Harry met the King with Meghan and the kids not so long ago, and he never said a word about it. Now, you just don't buy a house in the Cotswolds or in Northampton or in Windsor just without any details, and you don't enroll the kids in schools without some preparatory going on. So this has clearly been something that he and Meghan have been working on for some time. I have always been of the belief, and now I'm now being proved wrong, that Meghan would never return to this country. So it's now going to be very interesting to see what happens. Is she going to carry on the way she has been with her own business scenario? Harry is going to carry on more so with his charity work, and rightly so, because he's good at it, and he supports those charities that he is involved in, just like his late mother did. So all these questions, need to be answered somewhere or other. We're eventually going to find out where they stay. There's no question about that. And it's a question of, well, how are they going to fit in? Remember, he criticised Britain. Okay, he criticised the British press, but everybody criticises us. That's not new. But he's criticised his own members of the royal family. He's criticised his stepmother in a vicious book.
Well, and said the royal family was racist. I seem to recall.
Yeah. He said there was one member of the royal family who were racist, but of course they left out the then Prince Philip and then the Queen, and so you had this race in with, is it Charles, is it Catherine, is it William, and they were forced to deny that it's a racist family. So all these things, and people were talking to me this morning about reconciliation. I don't think you should see this as a first step in reconciliation. Okay, he's reconciled with his father, but the big problem is he has not spoken to his brother for the best part of 6 years. And, that is a big mountain that he's going to have to climb.
So I see this slightly differently as well. I used to live in California, and whilst it was great fun, it was soulless. And at the end of the day, I decided to come back to the UK because I just felt that, in fact, I had more intellectual conversations in one night of being back in the UK than I did in about 6 or 7 years of being in LA. So I do wonder whether it's also a failure of their businesses. They, made a mess of the Netflix staff. I don't think they're as happy as they think they might be. I think they want to try and have this half in, half out sort of role within the royal family. Now, the late Queen said that was not possible, I seem to recall as well. But I think that's where they're going with this. I think these are the first steps to coming back and then saying, and of course, Harry in the Invictus Games, he wants his father at the Invictus Games. I mean, I think there's something in that.
I partially agree with you. I think Harry has for some time been pining for the UK. I'm not so sure whether Meghan has been as pining as he has, but obviously he's come up with a plan, and she's agreed to come across here. And let's not forget that next week there's going to be the result of the court case against Associated Newspapers, where he is going to be told how much he is going to be forking out in the costs because he lost that court case. Now, that's going to be a couple of million quid at the very least. I would have thought. So welcome home, Harry. Here's the bill.
So are you sort of saying that actually he's going to have to get back on the royal list and do some work?
Well, you don't get paid for being on the royal list.
No, but one might get some, gifts from one's father.
Well, one might get some gifts, but his father might say, "Look, I've given you enough gifts already to set you up." Initially, he gave him £2 million, which is a lot of money in any man's language, whether you're rich or not. So the king has given him a lot of money at the start. Harry's going to have to do something. I don't know what it can possibly be. But if the plan is that he's going to be on the royal treadmill again, which, don't forget, Meghan was the one who didn't want to get involved in that. She did not like the pecking order that you've got William and Catherine above her, you've got the King and Queen above her as well. She's she was supposed to be a film star, in Hollywood. Well, in Suits.
Well, I get what you. Yeah, I mean, she was in Suits.
She's made a couple of films where she got a kit off and all that sort of stuff. But whether she's going to carry on with her jam making or her cookery program, who knows? If they carry on like that, they will not be doing royal duty.
Well, I do wonder also whether they have sort of bitten off the arm that fed them over in the States. When you look at Netflix and Spotify, they were described by a senior executive as grifters. I mean, when that happens and that sort of reputation goes around the industry, and having worked in that industry in LA, it is a very small insular industry and everyone knows everyone. And I guess they got this reputation for being unreliable or for being very difficult to work with. And, of course, if you remember, she wanted to be the next Martha Stewart. Now, clearly, that has failed.
And if you've got to remember, I think you're absolutely right, because when Harry and Meghan went over there, they had that royal appendage attached to their names. And you know what Americans are like? They love to be close to all that sort of stuff. They fell in love with Harry and Meghan. Well, it's taken them the best part of 6 years to fall out of love with, Harry and Meghan, because that royal links for the Americans, certainly studio bosses in television and films, did not think it was worth the trouble. That's why those things have ended with them.
Yeah. Can I just play you this clip as well? Because it's just such a peachy clip. When you juxtapose what he said in this clip some years ago and what he is now saying. Let's just take a look at what he said back in the day.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point, and the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done. So I miss the UK. I miss parts of the UK, of course I do, and I think that it's really quite sad that I won't be able to show my children my homeland.
But you are about to show your children your homeland.
There's clearly something happened from that clip in 2025 to them deciding we're going to buy a house or get a house in the UK, send the kids to school. How long is that going to be? Nobody seems to know. But at that time, he was not going to bring Meghan to this country or the kids. Now, all of a sudden, from meeting the king for an hour at Highgrove with his grandchildren and everything else, he's now upping sticks and moving back over here again. In that clip, he's still slagging off Britain. They've got to stop that for a start off.
Yeah, now there's another part to this as well, which is they've made that decision, but how do the British people respond to them coming back? And the answer to that, I think, is not particularly favourable. Now, there's a YouGov royal approval ratings show that only a third of Britons view Harry favourably, and it falls to just 22% for Meghan. I'm not at all surprised.
Well, they're both on the list of the royals that we like. They're both down at the bottom. I think the one at the bottom, well, I'm pretty sure the one at the bottom is Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So that's not exactly a great thing for them. But I read this morning that there was a poll of people commenting on various newspaper reports on them coming back, and they were saying that something like 84% of those people did not want Harry and Meghan back in this country.
Yes, exactly.
We'll have to wait and see what how it pans out. Are they going to do any interviews?
Well, they're going to have to do a charm offensive, aren't they? Because basically they stuck two fingers up at all of us and said we were racist and horrible, and they went to America. And now, of course, they're coming back. And I imagine in their slightly warped heads, they think there's going to be whoops of adoration, for example.
We'll have to see. We'll have to. Sorry to interrupt you, David, but we'll have to see, David, if and when Harry and particularly Meghan go out onto the streets, go to an event, how they are going to be received. Is she going to be booed? Is Harry going to be booed?
Well, I agree. What do you make of this? Dave in London, good afternoon. Dave says, so Harry and Meghan are coming back to the UK. I think his visa is up, so they have had to find somewhere to go. To be honest, I, for one, don't give an ounce of a damn about these two delusional opportunists. Now, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I seem to remember the Homeland Security obviously looking into the fact that he'd admitted drug taking.
Yes, and I read that again as well this morning, that it may have been something to do with his visa. Again, it's another one of these questions among the number of questions that you were asking right at the beginning. I mean, I don't believe... well, if Harry wanted to stay in America, I'm sure that any visa problem would have been sorted. I don't think there's any doubt about that. We'll just have to wait and see what the real reason will come out eventually. Maybe not next week or next month, but we'll find out. We'll be told somehow or other.
We will. Now, the Prime Minister has just given a comment on who's paying for the security for Harry and Meghan. And we talked about Ravik and the fact that, as far as I'm aware, hasn't changed. This is what the Prime Minister has just said.
Well, this is a private matter. It's a matter for Harry and for Meghan, and we wish them well in the move that they're making.
Well, it's not, though, is it? Because
No,
Ravik... No, it's not a private matter. I mean, he talks a load of guff.
It's tap dancing again.
again.
Tap dancing, and he's now tap dancing. He's now tap dancing again. The simple point is, the vast majority of people in this country do not want Harry and Meghan to receive armed police bodyguards unless they are working members of the royal family.
Quite right.
They are not, and I totally agree with that. Now, he's got security in the States. Now, he'll either bring that security over with him...
But they can't be armed if he brings them.
No, they may be armed in the States, but they won't be armed here. So, or he may just choose a private security company, an upmarket security company here to look after it. Now, I heard Di Davis, the former head of Royal Protection, on the radio this morning, and he was talking about the costs. It is incredible, the costs of security for the home, the panic rooms, the technology, escorting them through the cars. And don't forget, the kids are going to school. Who do you think is going to be taking them? Won't be Meghan and Harry, really. They might do it, but they'll still have to have huge security at whatever school it is they've chosen.
Yeah, Charles, one to watch. Thank you so much for your insight as well. Charles Ray there, former royal editor of The Sun. While we wait and watch and see, I want to see whether people welcome Harry and Meghan back with open arms or whether there's boos and hisses in a sort of pantomime-esque sort of feeling. Let me know your thoughts on that. Also, I'm asking about legal immigration this afternoon. Why is Britain this target for illegal immigration? We're far too soft. And then, of course, we don't actually deport anyone. Let me know your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222, and you can message us on X as well at talkTV. After the break, your turn, your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
Zia Yusuf is one very, very popular amongst the base, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons he is popular is because he speaks from the hip. He speaks in a language and with an attitude that is shared in pubs up and down the country, but not necessarily in Westminster seminars.
Do you think he gets away with being a loose cannon, whereas Tim Montgomery doesn't? Tim Montgomery gets suspended, Zia Yusuf gets hugged closer.
There's a big difference. Tim is an ordinary party member. He is not a spokesperson. He is not an elected member. He's not on the board. He literally has no role in the party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. Phone lines, red hot. Phil's on the line from Hertfordshire. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, David. Good afternoon. Yeah, it's just the information pamphlet that has been sent out by our government. Yes. But it's more like a request, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all nice and fluffy. Even the colours that they've used are nice, like non-evasive pastel colours. I mean, go back to when COVID was going on, David. The psyops that was done on that, and the leaflets and the colours and the strikes and, you know, you can't do this and the crosses and everything. That really got the message over, didn't it? You know, visual is very, very important.
Well, doesn't that say a lot about the priority of government?
Yes.
They terrified us over COVID and we were all about to die. And here they are, as I say, this is almost like, as a doctor, I can say this, but it's almost like a sort of infertility leaflet, you know, being understanding the journey that someone's going through and that we're here to provide information and advice and support. That's what this looks like to me.
Absolutely. It's very, very docile. It's placid. That's the way. That's the only way I can describe it. You know, they'll just look at that and screw it up.
Yeah, they will.
I mean, even the diagrams and the pictures, they're all very fluffy, aren't they? You know, some people are visual and some people are audio. But, you know, if you look at things, you can really get a message across by just looking at something. And that has not been designed to get that message across.
So that's quite interesting. When you, I don't know if we've got the picture here, but so the picture you mention is of clearly the man, the migrant, looking out of a window, whether it's meant to be remorse or not, and the woman with her head in her hands. Now that doesn't underline the messaging of this document in any sense. I mean, you know, I'd stick a boat on it with, you know, deport.
Yeah, I mean, he could be looking out the window and saying to his wife, someone's just hit our car, and she's crying.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it's ridiculous. If they want to do anything, he should be standing over her, looking down on her, you know, and giving it that message.
Or him in handcuffs.
Or him in handcuffs. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and not you could, it's you will go to prison.
Yeah, no, it says you could go to prison. You could lose your support. You could lose your accommodation.
No, there's no coulds about it. It's will and must and things.
Yeah, but the only will is it will affect your asylum claim. So obviously, well, that also tells you about the priority of this leaflet.
Exactly, but what does that mean? Oh, it will affect it. Well, in what way? It's so open-ended, isn't it?
It is.
You know, and this is the thing, and this is the message that, you know, unfortunately, I think it was one of your other callers said that the lives of the women and children of our country now have drastically changed, and I agree with it.
I do too.
You know, all I can say is it doesn't matter whether you're a champagne socialist, you're on the left, on your right. If you've got an undesirable and he's got bad intentions, he's not going to ask you who you vote for.
No, of course he's not. And also, I mean, it could happen to the child of anyone, regardless of how you vote. I mean, we should be absolutely united in this in condemning the Home Office and the government. What did you make of the Prime Minister's response to it? Because for me, it was a terrible, kind of willy-nilly wet weekend in Wimbledon.
Well, it was feeble, wasn't it? And I think is it your caller Andrew was on earlier. He said it was like word salad. It's nothing. There's no substance to it. You know, you listen to these politicians and you don't go away thinking, yeah, that was a good speech. Yeah, I really get what he was saying. You're just left like holding a bit of wet tissue paper.
Yeah, well, let's look. Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, said, the Home Office has spent your money to produce these for illegal migrants. Why are they in the country? I mean, at least that's stronger. And Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, wrote, the Home Office has issued this booklet advising them not to commit rape and sexual assault. Illegal and legal immigrants are coming from places and societies where attitudes towards women are incompatible with Western society. And at least the Tories are now talking about deportations and actually coming out the ECHR. But as I keep saying, they had 14 years to do that, so I'm not entirely sure I believe you.
No, they've had 14 years, and I think they've caused this problem, and it's just been exacerbated by the last government and obviously the Labour Party. And obviously Nigel's speaking strong words, and I think we've just got to start listening to him. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. They don't care.
I think it's time the politicians listen to the public, actually.
Well, I think you're right there, David, because the politicians seem to be working for themselves. They seem to have forgot who actually who's voted for them and who they're supposed to be representing.
I agree.
Now, whether that's ego or a sense of power, I really don't know why, but they've certainly forgot who they're working for.
Phil, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much for your call. Nigel's on the line from Brighton. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, David. Can I first say it's great to hear you back on the airways of Talk.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Well, I hope this isn't just a one-off.
Well, you need to talk to the bosses outside.
Anyway, hey, so what I wanted to really say is you've had a lot of callers ringing in outrage about this information pamphlet, and rightly so. It's just ridiculous, isn't it? But there's a huge part of this country that doesn't go looking for news. They don't buy a paper. They don't listen to Talk.
Yeah, really good point.
You take a look at the BBC News website at the moment and see if you can find this story anywhere. I couldn't find it at all this morning, but I have actually found it buried in the politics section of it.
Have you?
But but it's a tiny, tiny story.
Well, let's look here. So it's Harry and Meghan. Harry and Meghan, GCSEs. No, nothing. Oh, here it is. It's buried, you're right. It's in the politics section. And they only put it up 2 hours ago.
Doesn't that tell you everything that you need to know? I mean, the reality is that when I did some research, 60 to 70% of people get their news either directly or indirectly through one of the BBC channels.
Yeah.
And they're just because this doesn't fit their political ideology, they don't report it. No. And yet, when things do fit their political ideology, they absolutely amplify it and give it massive prominence.
Isn't that the truth? Nigel, you're spot on. Thank you very much for your call. Right, time for a break. After the break, we're going to shift to talk about health. These are incredible stories. A British scientist plotted to cover up the COVID lab leak. There's a lot I could say about COVID-19 and Wuhan, and also the manipulation of those viruses. Also, we're going to be talking about a cancer vaccine, which is very promising indeed. And we're also going to talk again about what's going wrong in NHS trusts. This is Talk. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you after the break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good afternoon to you. Final hour, 3 o'clock on Thursday, August the 20th. I'm David Bull, in for Ian Collins in my penultimate show, standing in for him. Let's have a look at the news headlines this hour. Well, asylum seekers arriving in Britain are being handed Home Office booklets explaining that rape is illegal and that men and women here have equal rights. Now, that, rightly, has prompted questions over why such basics need spelling out at all. Well, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are reportedly planning to move back to Britain. Wahoo! With Archie and Lilibet enrolled in British schools from September, though there are no current plans for royal duties to resume. And white pupils are now the most likely ethnicity to skip GCSEs entirely, with 1 in 30 entering no exams whatsoever. Now, that's the first time white students have topped this table since records began, and those are the headlines this hour. Well, a very good afternoon to you. I'm just watching pictures, actually, of kids opening their GCSE results. It takes me back. I didn't do GCSEs, I did O-levels. I'm that old. But, I mean, just the sense of anticipation and the fact that they're brazen enough to open them on camera. I mean, good, wow, good for them. I hope they've done very well indeed. I know a lot. They get a bad rap, actually, but I know that the young people are working very hard towards their GCSEs. But that story, actually, about white working class kids is absolutely horrifying. I'll just tell you what that is. White children are the most likely ethnicity to enter no GCSE exams. We know this. 1 in 30 who reached year 11 last summer didn't register any. It's the first time since the grading system changed in 2018 and 19 that the rate of white students skipping their exams is higher than any other ethnic group. And what are we seeing? Well, we're seeing that 1 in 10 disadvantaged white boys is reaching the end of secondary school without entering a single qualification. Nothing. And what are they going to do with that? I think it's a travesty, and we need to concentrate on that. Let's now turn to health. There are lots of health stories around. Joining me now is Martin Gower, a friend of this show and channel. He's a former NHS Trust chairman. Good afternoon to you, Martin.
Good afternoon, David. It's very nice to be talking to you again.
Well, it's been a while, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
Now, I might do these in reverse order, if that's OK, and we'll start with something that's particularly pertinent to you as a former NHS Trust chairman. And we spoke about it earlier on in the week, and I can't wrap my head around it as a medic. So, and I've spoken to a lot of my friends who are general practitioners, and they are as incensed and mortified by the whole thing of what is going on and the fact they can't actually provide optimum care for their patients. And I think it's worth just going over this again, because NHS patients died after GPs were encouraged to refer, wait for this, fewer patients to hospital. This is according to a watchdog. Now, at least 2 patients died. Others were left without help for months as a result of the NHS advice and guidance system. This is according to a big investigation. Now, we spoke about this earlier in the week, but essentially this encourages GPs to go to specialists, to ask for assistance from the specialist before actually referring them. Now, one is being cynical, might say this is to keep the number of referrals down. Now, the Health Services Safety Investigations Body has warned the NHS to stop this system, or at least pause it, because they're worried about people being harmed. And they say harm has arisen as a result of delayed or misdiagnoses because of the use of this system. What do you make of that headline?
Well, my immediate reaction to it, David, was to say, are the hospitals working for what is best for the patient and their family, or are they working for the data that the Prime Minister can declare at the dispatch box as to how much is reduced the waiting list?
Well, the answer is the latter.
It has to be. I'm sorry, there's no other alternative.
No.
However, bear in mind these are allegations.
True, but that being said, all my friends who are GPs, and I have many of them, are all reporting the same thing, merely that this is being used to block referrals to tertiary centres.
Yes, I'm sure it is. And of course, that's one of the quickest ways. We used to call it licensing. When I was in the an NHS chair, and I didn't finish until mid 2020, there were licensing going on, rationing. So you couldn't refer more than that number of people. So people got knocked along onto the waiting list for it's and the referral to treatment, which is the important referral, they don't actually get anywhere near it.
No, I mean, these are awful stories. In one case, a patient had been suffering from regular seizures, which obviously is very serious. A GP made an A&G request. It was unanswered by a neurology team for more than a month. A follow-up urgent referral by the same GP went unanswered for 6 weeks. The patient then had a massive seizure and whilst waiting and died of a cardiac arrest at home. Now, anyone who has seizures de novo, out of the blue, needs to be seen because something is going on. You could have a tumour, for example, a bleed. I do not understand how that was not picked up.
The story was raised in the Northern Care Alliance NHS Foundation Trust, which I believe is in Salford, but also covers Oldham. It grew from the Salford Royal Hospital, which used to be a pretty good hospital in that part of the country. What I always do when I look at these things, I looked at this a couple of days ago when I first heard about it, and there were two things I did. One was to read their latest board minutes.
Well done.
And see if they had that taste of a hospital that was being in crisis and not doing very well for the patients. The second thing I did was to look at the CQC report, which actually the last full CQC inspection they had was in 2022. And the 5 domains of the CQC were safe requires improvement, effective requires improvement, caring good, responsive required improvement, and well-led required improvement. Now, I was for a short term an inspector on the well-led domain for the CQC. Around the end and after, I was an NHS chairman. And let me just say this. What this smells of, to me, is very poor leadership.
Yeah, I agree.
Because good leadership wouldn't let this happen. You'd have been on to the local GP associations, the boards of those, the GP businesses, the local managers, and you'd be talking to them and saying, hey, this cannot happen. And to the commissioners, of course, which these days is the ICB. You would say, we are not playing. Sorry, we're not. But NHS England have told us that we've got to do this. We don't care. We are here to care for our patients. Now, come on. Let's get our act together.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, carry on.
But the second thing I look at is actually, it's interesting, the news today on their website, the Northern Care Alliance. The only news today, actually, here it was on the 20th of August 2026, warning patient that industrial action affecting operating theatres is taking place from the 24th to the 26th of August, and therefore your procedure may be delayed. It won't delay emergency care, but elective care programmes may be delayed by this industrial action. That was the most important thing they had to report.
Yeah. I mean, GPs aren't stupid. And when a GP refers to a hospital, it's because they have a high index of suspicion. Now, here's another one. A GP said, I've got a patient who I think has a melanoma, a skin cancer. It needs urgent treatment. Sent 6 referrals. Nothing happens. When the patient was finally seen, the patient's melanoma was so advanced it was very difficult to treat. I mean, all of this, by any metric, is totally unacceptable.
Yes, it is. And the background of strikes, and frankly, David, and I think you know this as well as I do, the culture in the NHS, the relationship between medical and clinical staff and the management is not good. No. And both sides need to work on that. I was very, very fortunate in my last 6 years as an NHS chair. The chief executive and I built such good bridges between the clinical side of the business and the business side of the business. We had dinners for people, all the newly appointed consultants. We got them to know. We encouraged them to come and sit in on a board meeting to see that we did talk about patient care. In fact, we started our board meetings with a patient story, good or bad. But actually, it all strikes me. And these things, look, does a hospital which was running all fine and dandy one day, suddenly in 24 hours become useless?
No.
No, it doesn't. It takes time. So why weren't the early stages of this sort of situation actually recognised?
I mean,
and when the
sorry, yeah.
Well, when the very first please don't refer this came along between GPs and the hospitals, stop it. It's it cannot happen for the reasons you've stated. The melanoma case is awful. And melanoma can be treated.
Well, absolutely right. But actually, Martin, it goes back a long way. You know, when I was a house officer some 30-odd years ago, it was happening then. So the management, and this is what I remember so vividly, when we went into the trust-based system, we started getting all these middle managers, you know, sort of floating around with clipboards. And I remember vividly being told by a sort of 22-year-old geography graduate, they said, and I quote, "Your productivity, doctors, is not high enough." Now, we're treating patients. We're not actually making widgets, and that has stayed with me for a very long time, because you can't always discharge patients because, you know, they meet certain criteria. It's about human life and whether they've got heating and slippers.
David, it's about outcomes, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
Whether you're efficient or not, if you have the right outcomes in the hospital, you'll be as efficient as you need to be. And that's why people have to rely. And you know, what really bothers me is the degree of confidence in the public. I mean, let's face it, when you look outside the window of your home, most of the people in your area hope they don't need those services.
Of course.
But they do hope that should they need them, they'd be extremely good and you wouldn't be mucked about.
Let's move on and talk about COVID-19. This is a big bugbear of mine because we were lied to. I admit that when the government then made us all panic and stuff, they said there were two premises. They said that vaccine would stop you getting the virus and it would also stop you passing it on, both of which were untrue, but they lied to the medics, they lied to the public as well. Now, also, there's a massive story, as far as I'm concerned, in the Telegraph today. This is about a British zoologist who was involved in risky bat coronavirus experiments in Wuhan, and he's accused of plotting with a senior US health official to shut down the theory that COVID-19 leaked from a lab. You'll remember as well as I do that we all thought right from the very beginning, wow, isn't it a coincidence this happened in Wuhan? There happens to be this testing laboratory down the road in Wuhan. The authorities said, oh, there's no link at all. Well, it now transpires that Dr. Peter Daszak, the former president of Eco Health Alliance, sent bottles of wine to this chap called David Morans, thanking him for his behind-the-scenes shenanigans and promising further gifts like dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. Now, Morans also worked at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and was an advisor to nonetheless Anthony Fauci.
Yes.
So this stinks. The fact is, you've essentially got these two people working in tandem to prevent the public from finding out there may well have been a link between what they were doing with coronaviruses in that lab and a possible leak, which then imperiled the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, David, Dr. Fauci, I don't know how many times he called for the Fifth Amendment, but he's just been in front of the House of Representatives. And it's been quite an extraordinary session. I mean, he's been very well grilled and equally has responded by giving very little away. To be honest, why did this virus escape from a wet market in Wuhan? Why not somewhere else in China rather than somewhere where there's a laboratory testing coronaviruses on bats? And even a woman who became known as Batwoman working there.
Yeah.
I mean, I could never, to be honest, you can believe in coincidences up to a degree, but it just seemed untrue. It's unlikely. It was always coming from a lab, and they did everything to cover it up. And they did it, in my opinion, to keep favour with the Chinese government.
I think that is probably right. And also, just in terms of that, this cover-up just gets worse. Morans published an article titled The Origin of COVID-19 and Why It Matters. He argued in this, even though, let's just speculate, he knew the truth, he argued it was a natural spillover from animals and called for work, such as Dr. Daszak's, to be funded to prevent another pandemic. I mean, not only does that stink of cover-up, but also it's manipulating the truth to get federal funding.
Yes. And David, if you look at the gap between what the medics were told, including those in the UK, what the politicians preach, and even people on the media saying we should lock down harder and sooner and longer and all of that. The economic cost of that was horrendous. The cost to our children was horrendous. And a lot of it, to be honest, was based on a lie.
Well, absolutely it was. Now, Morans, just to give you the rest of the story here, has entered a guilty plea, funnily enough.
Yes.
The sentencing is on November the 12th. He could face a fine of up to $250,000. And as you say, Fauci keeps exercising his Fifth Amendment right. Now, let's just finally talk about this, which is there was a lot of talk about the way the COVID vaccine was brought to market. And, of course, what we saw was parallel trials being done instead of sequential trials. That it was an mRNA vaccine, which we'd never used before. There were side effects to that we didn't know. I don't know whether the pharmaceutical companies knew about them. I'm being kind. But there is an upside to this, because actually what's happened as a result, the UK has become a pioneer in the use of mRNA vaccines, and now it looks as though they're having incredible results using similar vaccines to treat very aggressive cancers.
Including melanoma.
Indeed.
And reducing the spread of it, because sometimes people have surgery for melanoma and then it spreads later to other parts of the body. And it obviously would reduce the need for further surgery for people who are suffering that particular form of cancer. It sounds extremely positive.
It does.
I'm always slightly skeptical over what the likely side effects might be. Has the trial been long enough to really assess what those side effects could be?
And the answer to that is no, it hasn't.
And my other problem is that the NHS, when finally the thing is costed and we know what the price of this is going to be, is the NHS going to say yes, we do it, or no, we can't afford it?
Well, quite. And also, I think what this is, the reason I'm so intrigued by this is the advent of something which is really the panacea, which is personalised medicine. So let's take the melanoma. They excise the skin cancer, and then those rogue cells are taken, and then the vaccine is made against those rogue cells, re-injected, and then the body's own immune response then fights the cancer. I mean, that's very clever science.
Absolutely. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. You're right to look at things like side effects and, of course, the cost-benefit, and we don't know quite where that comes from. But, you know, the one thing that I would say about this is it has actually made the UK the pioneering country behind mRNA vaccines, and also, actually, we're starting to see a massive shift in personalised medicine, but also what we can do for people with very aggressive cancers. And, look, anything that gives people hope is a good thing.
It is a great thing. It's really good news.
Martin, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That's Martin Gower, former NHS Trust Chairman. Jane in Milton Keynes, good afternoon to you. Hi, David. I've seen firsthand the terrible treatment of the elderly in hospital. My mother was 89. She was physically abused by the staff, and it was in front of my eyes. Shocking doesn't even come close. I'm really sorry. That's just horrific. John in Spain, good afternoon to you. We're talking about the migrants and the guidance pamphlet saying please don't rape women or children. The guidance pamphlet is the government admitting that there is a problem. John, thanks very much indeed. Hi, David. This is Matthew in Cheltenham. I like what you've said at the bottom. I'll come to that. Unfortunately, the leaflet is correct. They could go to prison, because as we now know, some of these immigrants have been let off and not been given prison time for crimes of rape and sexual assault. The bit I laughed at, P.S. please make Friday Flowery Shirt Day. We miss your flowery shirts. That's a reference back to Weekend Breakfast. I'll think about it. I've actually got one with me. I'll think about it for tomorrow. This one, Paul in Southend, more lies from Burnham about deporting more illegals. How fitting that interview that you showed came from a rubbish dump. This is very apt. The young generation of white Brits are well on the way to becoming the underclass. Lots of you asking how much the leaflet is costing. And one more, I've become concerned. I have now purchased 3 times identifier sprays for the women in my family. I'm worried every time they go out. I would have chosen something that would help defend them, but we aren't allowed self-defence sprays such as pepper spray. in this country. Let me know your thoughts, please, about the leaflet that's been printed by the Home Office to illegal migrants saying, please don't rape our women and children because you might be denied asylum. It's utterly nuts, and it really does show an admission of liability and that there is a problem in this country. This is Talk.
Zia Yusuf is one very, very popular amongst the base, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons he is popular is because he speaks from the hip. He speaks in a language and with an attitude that is shared in pubs up and down the country, but not necessarily in Westminster seminars.
Do you think he gets away with being a loose cannon, whereas Tim Montgomery doesn't? Tim Montgomery gets suspended, Zia Yusuf gets hugged closer.
There's a big difference. Tim is an ordinary party member. He is not a spokesperson. He is not an elected member. He's not on the board. He literally has no role in the party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 324. Derek's on the line from Manchester. Good afternoon.
Hello, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you very much indeed. Pretty incensed over the Home Office guidance and this pamphlet, which just is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, that's what I phoned for. I mean, doesn't this make it even more important that MPs should be held accountable for what they do? Like any other job, a doctor, you as a doctor, if you make a ridiculous diagnosis or whatever, or you cause damage to someone, you can be sued for it. Why not MPs? Because in that case, they've just admitted that they're allowing in dangerous people. The next person that gets raped, killed, stabbed, whatever, should be able to take MPs to task for what they've done.
I mean, it's an intriguing thought, but you know, politicians are never accountable, are they? And if you remember, during various tenures, and then politicians are found to be guilty of whatever, they just leave office and nothing ever seems to happen.
Yeah, but that is the problem, isn't it? That really is the problem. I mean, it's like with manifestos, isn't it? They can make a manifesto.
Well, yeah, good point.
And even held accountable for it, like any other job. in this country, you're held accountable for your mistakes.
Just talking about Andy Burnham here. I mean, he just gave this interview about this leaflet, which, as I said, and a previous caller were talking about, it's not saying don't rape our women and children. It's saying, you know, in this country, please don't, because you might actually have trouble having asylum application accepted. I mean, who wrote this?
Well, it's someone that obviously doesn't want to offend the poor migrants, but not bothered about offending or seeing young girls killed and raped. That's the problem, isn't it?
It is.
You know, we've got too many people like that in this country, in high positions.
I mean, I've had stand-up arguments with people who work at very high levels of government who believe that we should have an open border system in this country, and that actually we are being far too hard on illegal migrants.
Yeah, that's probably because you've been having conversations with international communism and communists. And the clue's in the name, isn't it? International communism.
Yeah. So if you were in charge, though, I mean, apart from ripping up this booklet, goodness knows how much it costs, what would you do to stop this once and for all?
Well, I would, for a start, anyone that comes here illegally would not be allowed to stay, regardless of whether they've come from a war, because they haven't come from a war II country. They've come from France.
Yeah.
France is war with anyone, unless of course France starts persecuting people over there, or say the Isle of Man, or say Ireland, and we haven't got a single legitimate asylum seeker in this country. We haven't got one. We've never had one.
I know, and also it just seems to me, and it's all very well for the Tories to say, well, actually, we would deport them. Well, you didn't, did you? You had 14 years, you didn't leave the European Convention on Human Rights. Nothing happened, and now it's very easy for you to criticise the government, which also has done nothing.
Well, with the Tories, you see, you've got a party there, the same as Labour. They've all been infiltrated by communists. It's as simple as that, and they are internationalists. And I personally think that there's an awful lot of MPs getting backhanders for allowing this to carry on, because there's no other reason why they would do it. There's no other reason why.
Well, I'll throw back at you that they may represent constituencies that have a very mixed population. They're worried about their own position and whether they get re-elected.
Oh, yeah, of course they are, yeah. But the top of it is they've also got to worry about whether... I mean, the thing is, the way our system works, they're not held accountable, are they? Which is why, as I said before, a manifesto should be a legally binding document.
Yeah, love that. Love that, Derek. Thank you very much. Christine's on the line from Lincolnshire. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hello.
I just wanted to say that, I mean, all of this with the immigrants, well, they're not even immigrants, they're illegals coming here. I've known about them for years, and I've tried to explain to various MPs that I've had. And one of them even said, oh, I'll get this guy deported by next week. And when I went back to see him, he said, oh, no, it's okay. And the thing is, I had proof that this person was an illegal immigrant, that he conned Barclays Bank out of £10,000 for a so-called student's loan. And, I mean, he worked for PC World and Currys, right, at two different jobs, and they both had different forms, you know, with passports that had different names and country of origin and everything. It was so much proof. I've still got it, right? But they allowed him to stay. And then the next thing is, right, he's working for Group 4 Security, because when they did a check on him, he changed his name again. And I mean, I've tried for years. I've been trying to get it through to these MPs, but this last bit with this note about, you know, you may go to prison, that has depressed me like you cannot believe. And I think it's time. It's no good going on about they're not accountable. It's time that we stood up and we were accountable, and we just stood up and demonstrated. I mean, the French got rid of their royal family. Surely we've got enough to be able to stop these idiots from what they're doing. I mean, you know, how can you say? I mean, I even had a taxi driver a little while. I'm blind, by the way, so I have to have a taxi. And I had this taxi driver, and he said to me, "What's a pervert?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, well, his girlfriend reckoned he was a pervert because he wanted to have sex with lots of different women. So I sort of said to him, well, you know, you're a young guy, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's, I suppose, what people go through, but eventually we'll find the right one. And he goes, well, anyway, the thing is, if I have sex with lots of women, it stops me wanting to have sex with children. And I mean, I got out of the car.
I'm not surprised. I hope you reported him.
Yeah, I did, but it's just normal. They don't, these stupid MPs, I don't know who, they must be some kind of, I don't know, some sort of undercover agents from Iran or somewhere, because they can't be truly British people, and they certainly haven't got a brain cell between any of them.
Christine, sorry, I have to go to a break. Thank you for your call. Look after yourself. I just want to say, on behalf of PC World and Currys, and also I think she mentioned Group Force, there, of course, we have no evidence of that, and any company should undergo checks of their staff. So I just want to put that out there. And also, I mean, just horrific experience that Christine had there. Let us go to a break. As I said, after the break, we've got a tech section. We're going to talk more about this enormous lawsuit that's taking place in the United States. Meta's in this $1.4 trillion lawsuit over child safety. We're going to talk about ChatGPT for teens, something called an IKEA marketplace where you can finally get rid of your Billy bookcase. I think I've still got my Billy bookcase anyway. And lots more besides. So I'm going to be joined just after the break by Sean Keach, who's Head of Science and Tech at The Sun. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is 3:30, Thursday, August the 20th. David Bull in for Ian Collins. Right, I'm joined by Sean Keach, who's Head of Science and Tech at The Sun. He's chomping at the bit, aren't you?
Always when we talk about tech. I love it.
Right, I mentioned this earlier about this enormous court case that's going on in the United States. I said 30 states, but I think it's 29 states. And this is Meta, which owns Facebook and Instagram. Just remind us what the story is.
This is massive, and usually I try and bring on cheery news, and I suppose if you're resentful of Meta, then this is cheery news. But they're basically being sued in America, you're right, by 29 states. The total potential value of the lawsuit is $1.4 trillion, which is a lot of money. And Meta is worth about $1.39 trillion. So if they were fined that much, it would completely wipe them out. The idea is that Meta has basically been getting teenagers addicted to the platform. That's the claim. They're saying that they designed these sort of addictive scrolling methods. I mean, if you've been on Facebook and certainly on Instagram Reels, you can just scroll endlessly through it. They're saying that they knew about it, they concealed it from the public, they concealed it from parents, and that they also collected data unlawfully from minors. Now, Meta says that they've rolled out special teen accounts, that their product features are just sort of industry standards, and they've also called the damages outlandish. I mean, it is a big number, 1.4 trillion. I suspect if this does come to Meta being fined, they won't actually be fined.
But I mean, this has been going on for a while, hasn't it? And actually getting the states to coalesce around having this one lawsuit against Meta. And Meta's response to all of this, and actually just reading the court transcripts, I mean, it's pretty punchy what's going on, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's quite interesting that this feels like a very American thing because, I mean, you know, lots of British people know it's been very difficult to get Mark Zuckerberg over here to, you know, appear before the Commons. In America, they've just decided to go the legal route. This isn't a government situation. This is just states suing Meta directly, which feels very American. I mean, it's being compared to the sort of big tobacco litigation back in the 90s, which again was, you know, successful against the big tobacco companies. And you can sort of see the parallels because this is about, you know, addiction and getting people addicted to the apps. So it's hard. I mean, I mindlessly scroll all the time. It's hard.
Well, you're not a child, but when I see young people, they are absolutely engrossed in this, head down, you know, scrolly. And of course, then there is the kind of no cut-off, is there? At night, for example, the parents can't get them to go to bed. I mean, I'm not sure it's a great idea, and we talked about the curbs, and particularly parental curbs that may well be put on these kind of apps. I mean, is that something we should do?
It's a very difficult one because, I mean, as you rightly point out, even adults, you know, mindlessly scroll. And, you know, we're not vulnerable in the way that kids are. Kids just mindlessly scroll and they don't have the sort of, you know, adult faculties to think, is this a good idea? Should I do this? I mean, adults struggle with it. It's difficult to know how much curbs we should put on it because ultimately we do want freedom of speech and freedom of expression.
I get that.
So, you know, we have the social media ban, which is coming up in the UK. That's still sort of taking shape. We don't know how that will form. But I suspect for teens, and certainly in America, if this goes through, I think there will be an end to that
also
sort of
the kids are clever, aren't they? They can get round it.
Oh, they will certainly get around it. And we've seen in Australia where there is a social media ban, they've all, you know, the majority of children have found ways to get around it.
Well, that's right. If I can't do something, I give it to my nephew, who's only, you know, a little person.
They'll find a way.
And I'll say, how do I do this? And of course, that my nephew can do it. I
think back to when I was 14. If my mum or dad told me I couldn't do something on the internet, I couldn't message a friend, I'd find a way to do it. But of course, I'm a tech, you know, but people find ways to get around this stuff.
Of course.
You can't stop a teenager from doing something they want to do.
No, quite. Let's talk about OpenAI and ChatGPT. Now, I was just saying in the break to you, I cannot get my head around this at all. Young people here, like my producer, absolutely loves this. Different people have different AI things that they like. Claude, my brother loves Claude. I don't even know who Claude is.
People build relationships with these chatbots.
Well, that's part of this story, isn't it? The maker of ChatGPT is rolling out a new range of safety measures today for under 18s who use the AI chatbot. So could you just explain what an AI chatbot is for many people listening and watching this who will not know?
It's a bit like when you type something into a search engine, you get an answer, but it was sort of like a fairly bland system. You know, I type in, you know, what's the age of David Beckham, and it would tell me. This is more conversational, so you type in a prompt and it'll have a little conversation with you, and that's fine for getting answers, but people are building relationships with these things. So lots of people using these as girlfriends and boyfriends, lots of people using them as therapists. People, proponents of it would say, well, not everyone can afford a therapist, but actually there is something dystopian about this,
how do you turn it into a lover? How do they become a boyfriend?
Well, actually,
or girlfriend?
this is one of the situations with the ChatGPT bot, is that for teens, they're disabling romantic role play, because that is a thing you can do on ChatGPT. If you log onto ChatGPT, you can turn it into an AI lover and you can have very erotic conversations, if you choose. Of course, you can use it just as an educational assistant, but parents are rightly worried that their kids are going on and, you know, these chatbots are going to say something very strange to them. And also, we've seen in America, there's a lawsuit around a child who actually committed suicide, and that was sort of egged on by the ChatGPT bot. So, you know, it can go down dark paths. He actually basically sort of acted as a therapist for him, and then he sent a photo of a noose set up and asked the chatbot if this situation would work, and it replied that it would, and it explained it analytically rather than cutting it off, which is obviously
And who's
not
responsible
good.
for that?
It's difficult because you know, ultimately, that wasn't someone sitting in Silicon Valley behind a computer typing those things. This is a system that set it up. They programmed it. And so it's very difficult. It reminds me of the issues we have with driverless cars, where if a driverless car of its own volition, you know, crashes into someone, who's to blame for that? Because, you know, the liability is difficult to follow. I think lots of people would agree, yes, it is the tech companies that design these systems, which is why they're clearly starting to panic, and we need to come with these crackdowns.
I mean, it's interesting that many of these firms are concerned about what is going on. The kids convinced the AI tools they interact with are sentient. There's this chap who is called Mustafa Suleiman. He's the head of AI at Microsoft. He said it keeps him awake at night. He's worried about the impact of AI on society. Should he be worried?
I think so, and actually I've done interviews with experts on this who talk about the deep relationships. You know, people have had divorces over this, where they found out that their partner has built sort of emotional relationships with the AI. It gets very intense, and it's also difficult because if you do build a relationship with that AI, you have no control over that. If the company decides to shut that AI off, suddenly you've lost
your lover.
You lose your lover, which is hard.
That's tragic.
Which is, you know, it doesn't happen in normal life.
Now, also, I'm just concerned about the role of AI and sort of educational attainment and kids going to AI to get the answers, for example. And in the teen one, my understanding is that they're closing stuff off so that if you go to them, they won't actually give you the answer.
Yeah, so if it thinks that you're trying to cheat on your homework and just get the answer to one of your questions, it'll basically put you into this thing called study mode, where it basically helps you get to the answer, but, you know, it makes you sort of solve the problem on your own, but it gives you assistance in a way that maybe a tutor or teacher would, rather than just spitting out the answer to you.
Now, we talked about regulation earlier on. Is there any regulation in the UK?
It's very difficult to regulate this, and it's so new that there isn't really any regulation other than, you know, I suppose, like general laws like libel or defamation. There's no laws specifically governing what a chatbot can say to a teenager. There's the Online Safety Act, which mandates you know, who can access adult materials, and certainly that's related to how they're age-checking users for the ChatGPT for teens. So basically, there isn't when you sign up for ChatGPT, there isn't an age check immediately in the way that there might be for an adult website. What it'll do is, if it thinks you're asking questions that you know, seem like the questions that a teenager would ask, it will then dump you into the teenager category. And if you want to get out of that category, you would then have to complete an age check.
So if I was to use ChatGPT, let's go back to this and my needs and wants here, what would I use it for? So, for example, I have to give a speech coming up. Would it be useful for that?
Well, potentially. The jury's out on how good it is for creative materials. It certainly would spit out a speech. I would suggest that you probably would want to edit it quite heavily rather than relying on it.
But would it be accurate?
Sometimes. It's difficult because sometimes it will make stuff up. There's this thing called AI hallucination. Sometimes it will just invent stuff because, you know, it's easy to think that these AI chatbots know stuff, but actually they're just prediction models. What they're doing is always predicting the next word based on what the most likely next word is. And so you can't guarantee that what they're telling you is truthful. Often they will source things, but sometimes even if you click on the source, it takes you to a website that is completely unrelated. I mean, so you have to be careful.
Well, it's interesting. I've had experience of this with people looking for medical information and, for example, putting in symptoms to ChatGPT or indeed to Claude or whatever, and Claude comes up with a diagnosis. I then get a phone call to say, look, I've got this because Claude tells me I've got this, but you don't have that because actually the algorithm is wrong.
Yes, and you know, a lot of healthcare professionals are very worried about this, and you know, it will give advice on you know, caring for newborn babies. It will give advice on medication to take, and I would say a lot of the time it will be right, but it only takes those few times when it's wrong for it to be immensely dangerous. So I would say always double check what it's telling you.
Now, I haven't been to this shop for a long time, but IKEA. Now, I remember buying a Billy bookcase many, many years ago, and I still have Billy with me, but apparently you can now resell your IKEA stuff.
Very soon. So I'm in a bit of a love-hate relationship with IKEA because it is,
you need an
very
Allen key.
good, but it's very difficult. I get very tired of building this stuff and it never seems to work. It frustrates me immensely. But they're basically setting up a second-hand marketplace. It's a bit like Facebook Marketplace or eBay. It's a bit of a rival to that. It's purely for IKEA furniture, and so it's a nice way if you get very tired of building this IKEA stuff, you can just buy someone's that they've already built for you, maybe at a discount, rather than going to the IKEA store.
But also, are they not charging commission?
They are if you're selling it.
Right.
So, you know, there will be a small... I think it's a 5% fee.
But, I mean, who sells a, you know, a bookcase, for example?
I suppose if you're downsizing,
I suppose
today, if you can stomach the stamp duty.
well, that is also very true. OK, so are we excited about that or not?
I'm very excited.
Why are you very excited?
I hate building IKEA furniture. It drives me bonkers.
Oh, so you're going to get something on the second hand and then it's pre-made?
Don't have to build it.
Oh, I like that.
And it'll be cheaper than buying it new.
So whenever you buy any of that furniture, there's always something missing. There's always a screw missing.
There is always something missing, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm very pro buying furniture that's already built.
OK, let's talk about dating apps, which also I know nothing about at all.
I've been on a dating app in my entire life, so this
Haven't you?
I've been with my wife since I was 19, so this is...
now.
I know, it predates dating apps.
Well, some of my friends really swear by dating apps, actually, and the one they talk about is Hinge.
Hinge is very popular because it's meant to be for sort of long-term relationships, not for hookups. That's their sort of USP. But Bumble's in the news this week.
What is Bumble?
Bumble is another one where it was meant to be that the women message first, and so the women could then be more selective, because often if you go on something like Tinder, it's a lot of men just, you know, spamming women wildly, which can be difficult for the men because they feel like they're sort of screaming into the wind, difficult to the women because their inboxes are being flooded. So Bumble's whole USP was the women message first. They've scrapped that this week. They basically polled their users and they found that 66% of women prefer when the men approach first. So they've
Chivalry is not dead.
Well, there you go. So basically, they're just like every other app, and it's mixed reception. Some people like it. Some people say, well, you've sort of ruined the whole USP of the app. What's the point?
So if you are listening or watching this programme and you think I shall go on a dating app, which one would you choose?
I mean, I would have said Bumble was quite a nice option. I feel like Hinge is probably the one that most people think of. I think Tinder has this reputation now for hookups, and certainly if you just want to hook up, then maybe Tinder is a great option. I think Hinge tends to be very popular these days. You know, that idea of having a long-term relationship where you settle in with a partner, which I think a lot of people want.
Well, they do. I think it's very difficult to meet people as well, and also with younger generations not going to bars, not drinking, for example, and the cost of alcohol, maybe that's the answer.
And it feels like there's always potentially something better. These dating apps, that, you know, they serve up so many prospective partners that even if you're getting on with someone, you might go on the app and think, well, I might, you know, swipe right on someone that's even better in a few days. And so there's always that there might be something better that comes along.
That's the worry, isn't it? Always looking for something better.
I know. When really, you know, relationships, it's like a flower. It takes time to grow and you have to tend to it.
You have to water it. That's right, you do.
And dating apps don't allow for that watering process.
No.
It's all very snappy.
Some of my friends have got together from Hinge.
That's very true. Yeah, lots of people do find love, but lots of people find heartbreak.
They
Tragic.
do. Yeah. Let's talk about Sky, shall we? I did laugh when I read this. Customers of Sky's broadband-based Sky Glass and Sky Stream pay TV streaming devices, as well as those, and this is the reason I laughed, the older Sky Q satellite platform, i.e. the one I've got.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it was quite interesting, actually. They came round to my house and they basically said, oh, it's old technology, and then they wanted me to pay a ton of money to actually upgrade to the new one.
I'm not surprised. They're really trying to push people away from the satellites and onto the Wi-Fi boxes. It's just an easier setup. It's easy for them because they don't need to install the satellite dishes.
But what happens if your internet goes down? You have nothing.
You're stuck. You have to play Scrabble.
But I live in the country, so often the internet goes down.
That's very true.
But therefore, a satellite dish is a good option.
Yeah, it is. And ironically, there's this now big push to get satellite internet, where, you know, Starlink is a great example, where the internet is then delivered by satellite rather than underground cables.
But it's a very good idea, because also if someone cuts your internet cable, you are absolutely in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you know, digging up the ground and installing infrastructure is very hard, whereas satellite internet can beam it down to anywhere. Which it is expensive for now, although, you know, there is increasing competition. Obviously, Starlink is the main one, but Amazon is putting a load into orbit as well. So there'll be competition. But anyway...
tell us this story.
This week, Sky has basically announced that if you're a sports fan, you can watch 4 sports streams at once. I don't really get it, because I'm not a sports fan. I can barely watch one. I like a bit of F1 sometimes, but football bores me to death. But if you are interested in multiple sports all streaming at the same time, you can have 4 sports on the go.
Well, we should talk to Talk Sport next door.
They'll be chuffed. They'll be very happy with this news.
They will be very happy.
I think it would drive me bonkers, but, you know, some people are into that. And I suppose if they're all sort of mildly interesting, you can just flick between the one that is most interesting at any given moment.
And so you have sound from one of them, do you?
Sound from one of them. So you can switch the sound and you can make one full screen if you want.
So that's what we call in TV a quad split.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
You guys had it first.
We've had it for years.
It just suits Sky.
Yeah. Well, we've just had it for years. I mean, that's how we do the news, is you have a quad split and you decide which source you want.
I mean, I don't know much about sport, but maybe there is always 4 great sports going on at once.
Well, there may well
and you
be.
just can't choose.
Can I just tell you, by the way, my exciting news? So today I was told by I'll say Uber. I was told by Uber that I'm an early adopter of these driverless cars.
Are you?
Yes. So I'm going to be sent a driverless car soon. I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that's very good.
Are you excited about that?
Are you excited or worried?
No, I'm excited.
I get very nervous when tech controls anything. I think maybe
but
just
you
tech
like
brought
tech.
in for a long... I do, but I think actually I've seen into the abyss and a lot of dark stuff happens and it makes me very nervous. But, like, I often, I write about space all the time, but the prospect of going to the moon terrifies me. And if I was ever offered a press trip to the moon, I would turn it down.
So would I. So would I. There's a brilliant story today. This is about AI again and a receptionist. So there's a GP practice in Rotherham that's implemented this AI process, right? And when the patients ring up, the idea is that you talk to, what's her name, Emma, and Emma then decides your priority and whether you should see a doctor or whatever you should do. The problem here is that the AI doesn't understand the accent of people living in Rotherham. You couldn't make it up.
This is a nightmare. And I mean, lots of people have this experience of trying to get a doctor's appointment is very difficult anyway. I mean, GP receptionists, for good or ill, they have the best reputation. And so the fact that they've outsourced this to Emma, I mean, it's right, it's Enhanced Medical Management Assistant is what Emma stands for. And it's struggling with South Yorkshire accents. I mean, it's very difficult because these AI systems have to be trained on a big bulk of data. So they have to be trained on lots of audio of people speaking in a South Yorkshire accent. And I suppose it's hard to come by that data. So if you do have these sort of accents, it can be difficult for them to
the one thing I
understand it.
would say to that, and I mentioned it earlier on, in my car, when it links, when you've got Bluetooth to the car, if I'm trying to ring someone, it doesn't understand what I'm saying unless I adopt an American accent. And then at which point it might actually think it's the right one. So it doesn't recognise my mother. So if I say mum, it's no idea what I'm talking about.
I think they get worse over time because we have ours set up to control our lights at home and everything, and the amount of times I have to say it 5 different times, it just drives me mad. But I don't know, there's something empowering about being able to control the lights with my voice, but it also drives me bonkers.
I have that as well.
And it seems to break at the worst times, like, we've got a newborn baby, and if we've just put him down to sleep, that's when it will decide to be difficult with me, and I'll have to shout at it.
Right.
The speaker, not the baby.
Oh, I wonder. Who are you shouting at? OK, brilliant. Sean, thank you very much
Thanks
indeed
for
coming in. Sean Keach there, Head of Science and Tech at The Sun. Very excited about all of this new tech. Right, we'll take a break. After the break, your calls, thoughts and messages. This is Talk.
You doommongers, you're just killjoys, aren't you?
That's just silly, isn't it? I'm not a doommonger. I'm a factmonger.
Yeah? Well, why can't people just enjoy the summer?
And 1,000 people are dead. And 20 people have lost their homes.
No, well, that's bad.
And
I agree with that.
And our army has stretched me on breaking
But
point,
your
fighting over 1,000
your facts, you can't say 1,000 people have died because of climate change. That's right.
Well,
you
that's
laugh in a condescending way. You're making yourself look ridiculous. Don't blame me.
This is not a discussion. This is just a rant.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back just before the break, I was talking to Sean about all the tech. This is Michelle. My little boy is nearly 5. He uses my HP laptop. Yes, he's already broken the delete button, but never mind. He is actually on the spectrum, and he can create some amazing creations in Paint 3D and animation programs. However, I don't want to expose him to AI because I think it's counterintuitive to imagination. Agreed, actually. Particularly at young ages. I'm sure it's an art to use AI. It must be, because I can't do it. But for him, not yet. You can just tell AI to make something, and it just does it for you with just a few prompts. I'm still a skeptic and will avoid it as long as possible. The reason I laughed, actually, I've forgotten. My brother asked it to make a cartoon of me when I was in hospital, and it did. It was the most incredible picture, and it did it instantaneously. Let's take a call. James is on the line from Staffordshire. Good afternoon.
Hello, David. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, and you?
Yeah, it's only a quick, well, possibly 2 quick points. The first point is regarding the leaflets.
Yes.
There is in Afghanistan, it's even after 10 years of the West being there, the literacy rate is just 27%, and that's in their own language.
Good point.
And then in sub-Saharan Africa, it's around about 11%. So, in other words, you can print it in as many languages as you like, and if you're illiterate, it makes no difference.
It's a brilliant point. What do you make about the tonality of the leaflet?
Well, basically, it's an outright admission, isn't it? And as much as the Fabians like to say that all cultures are equal, they are not. It's as simple as that.
Well, they're not, are they? And, of course, what it says to me is that we don't want these people in our country, and particularly the onus here is just saying, pleading, please do not rape our women and children. Please respect the idea that women are equal in our society. I'm really sorry. If you don't believe in those principles and morals, you're not welcome.
No. I mean, the thing is, there are plenty. There are hundreds of islands around this country. For instance, Lundy, etc., that they could be interned on. They could be free to roam the island and this, that, and the other. All you need is either shipping containers or even the UNHCR use tents.
But all the lefty lawyers will say, well, the infrastructure costs are too high and they're human rights.
Yeah, look at the Bibi Stockholm. It was good enough for the army. It was good enough for welders and shipwrights and this, that, and the other, but not quite good enough for, shall we say, our brethren in the boats.
Well, absolutely. Isn't that the truth? Let me just ask you the question I'm asking this afternoon. Why, then, is Britain the target for illegal migration, not any other European country?
If you're going to ask a silly question, we've got the world's greatest human rights lawyers who are more than happy to dole out as much milk and honey.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
You
Dave,
can.
or ask the country. So, OK, so the French, they put enough fuel in the boats to get them about 2 or 3 miles offshore.
Yep.
The French then tow them out to
the 12-mile line,
the middle of the channel.
Yep.
What happens if we don't go and pick them up?
Very good point. I'll have to think about that.
The French would have
I think, to be honest, that we would have a social conscience and therefore we would do it. But if we don't, I don't know. Let me ask Kev. Kev's here. Thanks for your call. Kev, what happens? So the caller was just saying essentially the French tow it to the 12-mile line. If we don't pick up the migrants at the 12-mile line, what then happens? And I don't know the answer.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, I think they just carry on because it was about 4 months ago. It's a very rare occurrence. It was like a headline-hitting story that one of these